RedEye.
The world is very different now. For man holds in his mortal hand the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life.
It begins a very special time of the year for us. It's the time of peace and reflection. One thing we should all be thankful for is that we live in America, where we have the freedom to change things and the opportunity to grow.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States. That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States. And will, to the best of your ability. And will, to the best of my ability. Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help you God. So help me God.
So there's a lot of Mercury in this retrograde right now. I'm Andreas. I don't know about you. How are you doing? What's up, everybody?
I'm not Andreas.
This is
That's what
Brittany.
you mean.
Hey, Brittany. How's it going?
I'm
This
Brittany.
is a weird because you're over there. And then David. Good to see you. How you been, David? And then say it again. Is Amelia?
Yeah. Well,
Wrong.
Nahadar on screen, but
Nahadar.
my name's Amelia too.
Okay, just making sure.
Goes by both.
Always screw that up. And then Julia. What's up? How you been?
Aloha. Hi. Good.
Hello.
How are you?
Well, I
How's
mean,
everyone? Great to be here.
it feels like an astrological moment. I don't know. It seems like everything's all haywire. There's a lot of like sun signs and like, what's it called? Corona flares and then car crashes. We had an interview with a guy and he was had to go help his friend who was in a car crash. Another person was in a car crash. Then somebody who was going to be on the show called and sent us the picture of the car crash they were in. I don't know. Felt
I
kind
know.
of
I just got a new car battery, and then I went like on Tuesday, or like right when it went retrograde, it was like having problems. I'm like, Mercury retrograde, like the same day. Like I just got a new car battery too. Like so typical.
Oh my
Someone
God.
should have told me that was happening on Tuesday.
What was?
That everything was going retrograde. If
Oh,
I would
yeah.
have known, I would have like understood the
I
last few
did
days of
post a
my life.
meme. I think Julia saw it, right? I posted a meme about retrograde.
Oh my
and
gosh, it was amazing.
That's why I've called this meeting tonight.
Where's
Is there
that at?
anything to the idea if you were born in Mercury retrograde that
Yeah, no, you propel forward. I was
Timing
born like
right
2 hours before Mercury retrograde, and I seem to like do better.
Amelia was born during Mercury retrograde. That's why she's asking.
See, you know.
She's like, I'm fine. I don't know. What
I like it. I like it. I think I'm born during a retrograde, but I could be
Was
wrong.
I? I feel like probably not.
No, you
Judging.
seem like you don't
Been a
love the
little
retrograde.
off the
Where's
last few
the
days.
let's see photo
But
I
Andreas.
think I was
Christmas
born
is
during a
is
Jupiter
high.
retrograde.
I don't know. 1982.
Dr. Longo is saying something. There it is. Mercury
August.
retrograde. When your dialectic fails, sip on that Mercury in retrograde, I think.
Got it.
So what does it mean? Like we're talking about astrology. What the heck is it? Send us money.
Like Mercury in retrograde. What does that even mean?
Yeah, what is that
Where do we
about?
start with
It's going
explaining?
backwards, and it's a time where all the re-words come up, like re-examine, to redo. A lot of X's pop up during that time. Lessons you didn't learn, and they seem to surface and come out of the woodwork. Like, hey, remember me?
It's generally 3 times a year for 3 weeks at a time. There's also, you're in Mercury's shadow for a period, so you can't it's not like just like we're in Mercury retrograde, we're out of it. It's like a whole movement. And so, and it apparently it affects different people in different ways, depending on your orientation, circumstances, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Like where you are when it's happening. What do you think?
Is it your birth? Is it Is it like, yeah, what is that? Mock talks about that, right?
There's got to be synchronicities there to start pulling together a science or some consistencies.
Mock's principle in astrology. You know this? Like the Mock speed guy, he talked about astrology. They said, what do you know about astrology? Is it real? Is it nonsense? And he's like, well, I don't think people understand how the stars affect us, but the idea that they don't affect us is way weirder. So there probably has to be.
I don't know what this seems really synchronistic, but I'm an editor for a book publisher, and I worked on this book this year, which is about exactly that. I'm like,
wow, really?
Hawking the book.
Ding, ding, ding.
It's a geologist who's also an astrologer, Bruce Schofield, and it's like one long screed like rant about how all these scientists are so knee-jerk rejecting of astrology, which they don't understand the first thing about. And then this is like a whole book where he explains how stupid they are.
Whoa,
That's awesome.
So you had to edit it, so you kind of know that book inside and out.
Yeah. I mean,
so what is it? What is it?
No,
what's the nature of astrology?
I can't really speak to the book like I'm an authority, but he's essentially pointing to all these. First of all, the whole history of astronomy and how much we've learned from historical astronomy. For example, everything about tides and everything. It's all astronomy. Astrology. They're the same thing.
Totally.
If you go back far enough. He talks a lot about magnetism and how a lot of animals have magnets inside them, which
I've been thinking a lot about the birds, right?
So there's the studies on that and animal magnetism in the 1850s, and then the human clairvoyance, and von Reichenbach. So, and now they're bringing that science back and saying it's effectively behind a lot of bipolar diagnosis, and people aren't aware of how the moon is impacting them. So there's starting to be science brought back into it, which isn't really cool. And yeah. I don't know, just if you teach people about that and they're more aware of what's happening to themselves based on the moon cycle.
Right. If animals go south for the winter, what happens to you?
Not just that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot though about like your ingrained natural response to the environmental EMF.
True.
So I got in my first argument with my ex Amy after like 2 years of not arguing, and we got in a big argument over astrology. And it was the last thing I thought we would have. I was just like, it was like this surprise or whatever that I actually like entertained astrology in a serious way. And she just was like, it's just what the hell? And she kept saying certain what felt like bullet points, like these are like almost like talking points. And I was like, where is this coming from? Like, what have you read? And I finally, after the longest time, she told me that she was really influenced by Carl Sagan. Oh. And so particularly one chapter of Carl Sagan in a book where he went off about astrology. And so I said, can I read that chapter and we can reconvene this conversation so I can have a debate with Carl Sagan myself, like before I return to this debate. And basically what I ended up reading was that he was making this distinction between astrology and astronomy. And he was saying if in the old times, he's like, when we were so primitive, we had astrology, and eventually we advanced into astronomy. And so what I took from it, I was like, well, that's very presumptuous. First of all, like to assume what ancient people, and we don't even know like how these people, apparently they're speaking in math. It's crazy. But like to assert that to assume that they were so primitive that when they looked at the stars, like whatever you thought, like the idea of anthropomorphizing, the way that ancient people may have related to anthropomorphizing as compared to like the way that we treat it. When we talk about people in ancient civilizations worshiping gods, like it's also, there's going to be a gulf of distinction, whether you're talking about the Romans,
we
Greeks.
de-anthropomorphize the past. We're like, there's no way these people had families with mortgages. It's like, look at the Freddie Flintstones. I mean, they definitely had
And then there was the gravitational point. So he's saying we've tested for gravity. Can we be effective through gravity? And he's like, I'm like, dude, you think that gravity is the only thing that in cause and effect? And who's to say we're even talking about cause and effect when it could be on some level one movement? So just like in nature, you have a larger movement. Like we're all whirling in what we usually relate to as like a giant disc, but it's really more of a sphere, right? So there's like, for every galaxy, there's like a galactic halo, and the stars spread out, and there's more stars supposedly in the
turtle
in the outer edges of the sphere than there are in the center, but it's so vast that we can't perceive it that way or whatever. But like, point being is like, that's one large movement, and then all the other movements that are contained within that movement, are they in that same flow, so to speak? So it's like when you're trying to measure and you're saying, does this affect this? Well, you have a lot of assumptions built into that, and you can end up with a syntax error. And I think a lot of the arguments against astrology kind of have a lot of syntax errors embedded in them because there's certain assumptions. It's just like, if you look at something like Religulous or whatever, what is that guy, Bill Moyer, right? It's like Bill Maher, sorry. Yeah. Whoa. That's weird. But
that's the Irish side of his family. That was
Is that Suzanne Summers or Sally Struthers? Those aren't the same woman. No, those are totally different women.
Barbara Walters is dead.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah.
What?
Julia. L'chaim.
Oh,
right.
That was us. Like,
Cheers.
I got a milkshake.
I already processed it. No, I mean, keep going. I don't know. I'm not gonna tell my story about Barbara Walters. Whatever.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know.
It talks a lot about in the book just electromagnetic stuff happening out there, and how these things reach us, these things affect us, and all the studies. He goes through all the studies.
I need to get that book, by the way.
Yeah, it's like a book about astrology for scientists and about science for astrologers.
It's perfect.
Yeah. That's exactly what I've been waiting for.
She could. It's possible. Apparently, no. Should I be saying this? What's classified? So like, there's a Hodorowski book that's like set to be edited, and I got like my fingers crossed. I'm like, oh,
really?
God, you could be editing that Hodorowski book. Yeah.
There we go. This is the kind of information that we need to combine.
Things are just governed here by things, and I just feel like, if in our families growing up, if they looked at your birth chart and were like, oh, she's got Mercury in Scorpio, like she's not going to really be expressive.
What that means?
Like, like certain things where it would help us in our relationships.
So, yeah, but isn't astrology racism? It's star
totally
based. Because you're like, look at that person, Virgo. You know what the Virgos do.
It's totally judgmental.
Right, but that's a very mediocre.
So many people don't know who they are or what they are, and I think it's a great tool to like have a deeper look at oneself and how you relate to others. And if you don't know where you are and who you're going with, and this will give you more insight, and you can use it as a great tool for that.
The truth is, it's true.
Perhaps a part of a mental wellness program that could be implanted across an educational curriculum.
Disc theory.
I'm a health teacher, and so there was no.
Man, I mean, what is disc theory other than like
so
merit-based stereotype prejudice? I don't know if you want a better system for this, but you're saying it's a great thing because it's managerial theory. You find the people that work best with each other. This is how you run a company. Save Apple and Google. I mean, that how's that different than the star root chart?
But isn't it kind of backwards though, the way that like so often astrology is kind of like an outside in kind of thing? Like I've found, and I don't know, like the way I was instructed to approach astrology was to simply first step, pay attention to the trines, the sextiles, the conjunctions, and the squares as they occur in real time, and just taking note and living your life. And so it's like if just paying attention to that, and then you'll notice certain patterns like over time. And I think it's like a lot of things. I feel like there's no real substitute for a time trial. And in getting to know, like, especially with what's going on with the moon as it's occurring, like internally, and just taking note because things cycle around. And if you just pay attention to that for a while, when it comes to what we say is like personality types, like, oh, I just have to find that Libra man. There's like these kind of like ways that people often, treat astrology like stereotyping. That's why when you say like astrology is kind of racist, yeah, it generally is in a weird kind of way, because it's like Risa DeAngelis in the Good Times or whatever. It's like there's like a lot, like what I was saying before. It's like there's certain embedded assumptions when people start out. And so it's not just true for people who just speak against astrology. It's also true for like, for treating a categorizing of people by like, especially if it's just like by their sun signs. Like you find out there's something like we're a whole composition. There's so many things at play. And like, it's also looking at your progress chart versus your natal all through time.
Right.
So, yeah.
So it doesn't have to be, it could be something different. It could be that we're looking at the stereotypical conditions that somebody's going to endure. You could say this is a stereotype that lower middle class Americans might have a harder time in life or something like that, or that
Right.
life might treat African Americans worse, and there might be more prison time. Those kinds of stereotypes talk about conditions in the environment. And it's the same thing perhaps in astrology, where you're saying, well, these are the kinds of choices they're going to have to make, whether or not they're making this or that choice, Slytherin or Gryffindor or whatever.
But what age did you all like learn that astrology was important to understanding yourself and others? Was that
16.
young? Because
Yeah,
can I
16.
ask?
About 16, I'd say the same.
I mean, yeah.
So-
Okay. So basically
33.
I heard about it. I heard about it all my life. And as
Last
a little
week.
kid, I just I
40.
believed it wasn't true from a very early age, because I am born on the cusp of Aquarius to Pisces. So I would read the Aquarius stuff and I'd be like, well, this is off. And then eventually I dated this like Wiccan girl when I was like 15, 16. And she's like, dude, you're a Pisces. And I read it. I was like, no. And I'm like, oh, wait, damn.
I've
And that
met
was
people
annoying.
who came here from like a different country and they thought their whole lives like they were a certain sign and they didn't resonate with it. And I've been there where they found out they weren't that sign. They're like, no, we lied because we came here from another country.
Yeah, I actually had that happen to me in a different way, where for years I thought that I had a Cancer moon, and I actually have a Taurus moon, and it was just because
So
the
does
birth
Brittany.
time was wrong. So when I first went on a computer and put in my birth time, I didn't have what was actually on my birth certificate, and so that being off changed my moon sign.
So what does the moon sign do, and what's the Taurus moon versus
And
the what
what's
was the other
mine,
one?
Julia? Julia
my
knows
God.
about my stuff.
Yeah, he is
I'm
moon and Taurus.
noob.
Okay, moon and
Noob.
Taurus, your emotions are steady,
Right now?
you're- yeah, well,
Today?
it's a fixed earth sign, so you're not going to be like all over the place. You're going to be calm. Not that you guys don't get ragey or whatever, but you're purposeful, you're dependable, reliable, and you guys go after what you want, and you usually get it. Like once you decide, I feel like you guys, it takes a while for you guys to decide what you truly want, but you're unstoppable and you're so patient, like, and how that applies to your emotional world, that you have a calming presence, but you hang on to things, it's hard to let things go,
Dang.
So I grew up with astrology. My mom did my chart, and so I felt like, okay, nature versus nurture. Did I just grow into, because I knew my chart before I was a person, and so then it was like, did I just fuck myself up by like, sorry, am I allowed to say that? By growing into what I was written to be in this chart. And so I've always so a lot of people have that attitude about astrology of like, it's total crap. And of course I believe that that's how I feel because I'm a Capricorn or whatever. I'm not a Capricorn, but it's like a joke.
That's a Jim Morrison joke, actually.
Okay.
I don't know how many people believe in astrology. I'm a Sagittarius, I'm myself,
I'm
most
a Gemini.
philosophical.
Yeah, I'm a Gemini on the cusp of Cancer, so it's like very confusing. Being a cusp is confusing.
Yeah, I'm a cusp. I think most of us
I'm
are.
not-
You're not on the
I
cusp.
don't know.
You're like
No,
firmly
am
in.
We
Three
talked-
girls, one cusp.
Aww.
Oh, dear.
I've never
I'll take
actually.
it. No.
I'll
I don't
take it.
actually
It was
know what I'm saying.
witty. Bounces back. What about
That's good.
Ophiuchus? Ophiuchus. 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 Ophiuchus.
I always
If we
said
didn't, if you didn't get
Ophiuchus.
banned for the F word, I just did. But what is the name? What is this? It's this
Means
13th
we're all
moon.
screwed.
Yeah.
Some people refer to it as the 13th sign of the zodiac. The significant thing about Ophiuchus is that it actually lands on the ecliptic. And so the argument
Look
for
at him,
what
he's, like,
makes
writing a
signs rather than just constellations is if they're on the ecliptic. And so the thing is, though, if you're drawing out a natal chart, like traditionally, like it's hard to get 13 in there. It's much easier to have to use an even number for obvious reasons when you're dealing with a circle. But you know, but I have had my chart done by hand. I just had this conversation with Amelia. This is so funny that we're discussing astrology in the first place because I was just talking about this. But I'll repeat a conversation that I just had earlier. But basically, you know, I was really impacted by a woman in the BOTA. It's the only secret, not so secret society that I've ever belonged to, and it was just like, you know, it was a bit over a year, maybe closer to 2. I can't remember exactly, but there was a woman there. The only people I've ever met that really have proven themselves to really know astrology have all been women. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but I've never met a man that actually like blew my mind with astrology stuff. But one of them was my friend Dawn, and the other one was this woman who will remain nameless from the BOTA. And she did my chart for me. Like I gave her my info and she didn't use a computer. She did it all herself. And she wrote, like, she handed me like this pamphlet of like all the stuff about me. And she said to me, when she gave it to me, she goes, I don't know, I'm curious of what happened to you in your life on this date. Because what she was doing is she was taking my progress chart throughout my life and comparing and contrasting it with my natal, so that basically like certain events occurred at different times in my life, and she could see in my chart where that showed up. And she gave me a date and she said, what happened at this time? And it actually, the date that she gave was when I left, when I was expelled from a Christian school for giving a kid a concussion. When he came at me and kick me, and I lifted his legs straight up in the air. And it was just,
I mean, it was Monta Vista.
and
he
was Vista Christian school. Yeah, and so he landed on the back of his head on concrete, just because in a moment he went to kick me and I lifted his leg straight up, and I didn't even it was so automatic, you know?
Right.
And anyway, but yeah, I got expelled, and it was like right that time was when she pointed to and said, something very significant happened here in your life. I'm curious what it is. She also told me that I have a very rare configuration in my natal chart, that the only other person that she knows that has it is Hitler. But she told me that the planets, the signs that he had to counterbalance to deal with the geometry, so to speak, of like to counterbalance what it was in his chart, was Leo. So he had to imbue Leo, like, to make things to live his dharma in a sense. And so, and as astrologically. And so she said, for me, it's actually Taurus. I believe it was Taurus. I'm a little wary.
Makes sense. Taurus, you have to complete a thing, get to the end of a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say there's something kind of ironic, because I finally made the leap to astrology because of you, and because like a synchronistic story related to that. And I thought about, I wonder if, you know, anything in my past could be tracked or looked into. And anyway, and just talking to other people. So you said you've never been influenced by a man into astrology. I actually looked into
that really impressed me with their relationship to astrology.
Brother Zigo, some people say Ophiuchus appeared via mandala effect and is a symbolic of a man taking hold of a kundalini. I don't buy this because Mayan. I've spent my whole life using the Mayan calendar. I used to get in trouble for just writing the Mayan calendar on my hand in Christian school. They didn't kick me out, but I didn't stop. But this is like the clock with 13, right? You've got the, 2, 3, 4, but this is 0, right? And then you go all the way. 12 is 13 because there's 0 to 12 and 13. So they've got the 13 signs for the 13 moons, which you notice there are 13 moons a year, just about. And so that's a lot easier than having 31, 30, 28 days sometimes. You just have like 20-ish days. You got the moon, you got the month, get the month going on. You got 13 months. It's pretty reasonable. So I think Ophiuchus is real. But also the symbol, right? I get the Kundalini vibe, like he's riding the snake. He's
supposed to be the only even constellation that's actually based on a real person. So it's said that he was curing people with snake venom. He's basically a snake oil salesman, but they believed it, because it was apparently it was real,
It's happening during the part of the year where, and this changes because of the long count, but the Mayan calendar have they've got like a few days out of time, like because certain days don't fit into the month, or they have just sort of this like woo period there, which is just like the days out of time. And that would be also happening during the Ophiuchus period, which
isn't that supposed to be what Shabbat is?
Is that what Shabbat's supposed to be?
Actually, Shabbat is supposed to be that the days are twisting around. The 6 days are twisting around the 7th day, which is out of
Interesting.
But does Ophiuchus always?
What do you mean twisting around?
The day they rest.
Everything's about twisting in Judaism and Jewish mysticism. So like the locks.
But God,
it's like everything that tzitzit, like everything is related to twisting. Like when you do tefillin, you're twisting. So like the idea of the spiral is very central. The blowing into the shofar, all these things, like So it's
does Ophiuchus always fall in Kislev, the Hebrew month of Kislev?
Does it always?
I would guess that it does.
It's a certain degree of Scorpio into Sagittarius. Supposedly that if you look at Crowley's Thoth deck, when you look at the Knight of Wands, and he's like coming out of this fire, that the reason he doesn't, this isn't in the book of Thoth, but it's said that the reason why he has those scales is because they're showing a snake, because that decon actually belongs to Ophiuchus and not Scorpio or Sagittarius technically. I'm actually in Ophiuchus, in the center of Ophiuchus, December 8th.
Oh, cool.
Kislev is the month of dreams. I don't know, the out of time sort of made me think about that. Because like in the cyclical reading of the Torah Parshas, the dreams of Joseph that he had, and like all the dreams in the Torah happen in those in that window in Kislev.
Yeah.
So, and I always have intense dreams around Kislev also.
It's also interesting because it's this, the month derives from the Akkadian occasional. So it's such an ancient, idea. This goes back to like the most ancient calendar, and probably the celebration at that time of the year, maybe even like outlive the calendar itself or the religion or, our civilization.
Dude, I checkmated my boss earlier today because I in this related discussion, because he was talking about when people see significance in days, like specific days, like birthdays or whatever, and he was like, it's completely arbitrary. The calendar is completely arbitrary, and I was like, well, you do realize that the Jewish calendar is all set to the moon, so that all the holy days will land on full moons or new moons or eclipses, And I was like, it's all set to that. So when you, in a way, that's another way we can describe how our goings on aren't separate from nature. So everything around us can be represented and understood through numbers. You graph the numbers of any system, patterns emerge, like it said in pi. But we're not separate from that. So like our goings on, but do we have the ability to have the perspective that it would take to recognize all that pattern? It's like a dog looking at a chessboard or whatever, we're kind of like that inevitably. I think just developmentally and evolutionarily where we're at
I'd say that's me, and you're like several steps above that. So there's a middle point and an advanced point where people understand the full spectrum and they're living as these gurus or shamans probably, and that's what they're studying. And you're at a heightened level probably of living probably happier than a lot of people. I don't know, just in acceptance of the way things are, because you're in touch and in tune with reality. And I think that's probably to be said to be most people that are watching astrology and are in tune with themselves. So it is important to get other people, I think, to wake up to some of the science and history behind it and the validity behind.
I mean, I haven't been paying attention to like the advice that I was giving for if one wanted to learn astrology. Like I didn't keep doing that. Like I did that for years, many years. I'd I'd recommend like a wee moon calendar. Like
I always thought it'd be helpful is like when you wake up in the morning to have like a forecast. Like you always see the weather forecast and it's like, oh look, this is what's going on. Like, oh, better avoid. You might be quick with it, like quick temper. It kind of keeps people, and it will help guide them of like, oh, that's why everyone's on edge, or that's why there's so many aggressive drivers. It feel like it should be like a daily little forecast, like the weather.
Right. Well, there's no end to how deep into astrology you can actually go. And my experience was just one of like immersion of pain, of attention for a sustained period, had its effects, but that didn't just be like, that didn't become like a permanent thing. Like that was just how to explain it. Like, so like for a long period, I just paid attention to what was happening astrologically, like deeply, like, you know, taking note of everything that was occurring for over a long period. And I didn't do any substances or any, like I was all like raw foodist at the time and whatever. I had several years of that. And then one night at a festival, I dropped acid. I dropped like a lot of acid, and I hadn't had LSD in years or any psychedelic. And I went around that party, and I would look at people. I was talking to somebody's talking, and I could see their sign in their face. Like I could see like the figure, and it was like it was. I would say 8 out of 10. So I would say it out, like I would just tell somebody. I'd be like, "You are such a Pisces." And they'd be like, how'd you know that? And it was like, I was getting the mostly on point. And I feel like the only reason why that was happening like that was just from all the repeated attention and practice. But that's not something that I was able to like sustain in my life. Like, but will be times where somebody's talking. It happened at a party once where this girl, she says, yeah, doctor, I'd never met her before. It was just, I was sitting there and she was talking really loudly. And I just said, oh my God, you're such a Pisces. And she wouldn't leave me alone for a while after that, wanting to know how I knew she was a Pisces. And I was just like, you're just exuding it, you know? And she's like, what does that mean? And I'm like, it's hard to explain. And that's the funny thing about astrology is that we have certain ways that we put things, but language is different from person to person. So when you're describing a characteristic or whatever, I mean, there's certain stereotypes that are like consistent. Like, how do you get a Leo to pay attention to you? You wear a mirror. You know, like I love that joke because it tends to be true, and it's not. I don't see that as an insult. I see that as just like, because you know, what is the mission of a Leo? It doesn't stop there. It's like part of it. So it's just like what they say with Scorpio, that there's the 3 stages. There's like the scorpion, which is super low to the earth. That a scorpion cornered can actually kill itself. It'll stab itself with its own tail. And then there's like, you know, the eagle or the bird of prey, basically, that is witness consciousness, like it's soaring above, but it can attack, but it doesn't have to. And then there's the dove, you know, and the dove is just a witness consciousness, complete. It's a symbol of peace, you know. So it's like that's old alchemical explanation of Scorpio in stages. So it's an alchemical movement. So it's not like, so when you're approaching a sign and you just say, this is what this sign is, it's like, you're actually saying that earlier, Julia, that, you know, what I'm speaking to, that, you know, you say this, this will happen. You're this, that you can be this, and then that things can continue to develop in other ways. I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but you did speak to that you're not stuck with something, you know. In other words, when you say this is your sign, therefore, you know, this is, you know, what it can be or whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting. A weird story. I went to Brandy Melville. I've never shopped there in my life, and I went there, and there's this girl, and there's a line, and there's this girl in front of me. This is like a month ago, and she has this quote tattooed on the back of her neck, and it was something about light. And I asked her, like, hey, excuse me, can I take a picture of do you mind if I take a picture of the tattoo on your neck? And she's like, yeah. So I take the picture, and she goes, I met you in Laguna Beach. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, I met you. Do you remember me? And I said, no, I didn't remember her. She goes, yeah, you said you guessed you said that I was a Libra Sun, Venus Scorpio. And I'm like, and she's like, I am. She's like, I'm a Libra Sun, Venus, and Scorpio. And she's like, you know, thanks. It really got me to like look in my chart, because the fact that you didn't know me and you came up to me and you said this, and it turned out to be right. But I think when you're in the zone and you're just in that magical frequency and you just feel it and know it. But what I notice is like when people say like, do me, like, guess me, what am I? Then it like shuts it off, where I'm like, what? No.
Do me. I'm just kidding.
I know your chart, Brittany.
I know. Is it on from what you know of me?
Oh
Like,
yeah, definitely. And I love
okay.
like Brittany has Venus in
Yeah.
Cancer, and that's one of my like favorite placements. You know,
Mhm.
they're so nurturing. They're like the ultimate companions. You know,
Oof.
they're so loving and
Doomed.
nurturing. Hmm?
I'm doomed.
Doomed.
Venus in
I'm
No.
doomed to be
Cancer.
nurturing and loving. I'm just kidding.
There's an album.
That's
I'm gonna have
good.
to listen to the. Ooh,
It does
I should
explain
get
it.
that vinyl.
Whoa.
Right.
That's
Nice.
the imagery. That's
Hey, it was a better time in 1969.
I'm not that Venus in
Yeah,
Cancer.
Venus in
must-
Cancer. Venus is in Cancer are quite sensitive when it comes to dealing with love and relationships.
lovely.
Ooh.
like just they're the ultimate nurturers and the wonderful parents. Oh my God, the world
Aw.
would be a better place if everyone's mom
Well,
and dad who had Venus
think-
in Cancer. Oh my gosh.
Christmas might be a little out of control.
Did you guys know what I was referencing?
It's a
Anybody when
weakness.
I said I just have to find that Libra man?
No.
That's Grey Gardens. You ever seen Grey Gardens? About the who was it? It was Jackie Onassis's like family members that were like in the living in that kind of
Rundown
mansion with giant holes in it that the raccoons were coming in through and stuff.
Oh, I haven't seen this.
So they're into astrology, one of them in particular, and so she's like reading this book. I think in my head it's like the book was written by somebody named Zohar or something. But there's it's like some the stars like consult the stars kind of book, and she's like, I just have to find this Libra man, and she's very enthusiastic about it. It's pretty funny. But yeah, these women actually influenced fashion and when this came out in the 60s, like people started wearing towels on their heads with little like granny buttons keeping them together and stuff.
Adorable.
Oh my God.
Can I ask, since we have the computer guru here as well, in like the 90s, late 90s, they had those computer data match, just like your name and birthday. And it would put like all the kids in your high school, the top 5 relationships for you. I'm wondering if they used birthday, which was related to astrological chart and lineup for those.
So that's a question. I think a lot of
That's the only thing they could think of that they would have used now.
People's last names where they sit in school, people they run into, right? I think this is another thing. People reading the same astrologers' recommendations, a city that's running off one newspaper's astrologer, so they're all making the same decisions. This could be the other side. What if I spent so long thinking I was an Aquarius that now I have Aquarius tendencies because I like lived my life in that ritual.
But that reminds me of the fact that the archetypes are designed upon a previous night sky, right? Like we've shifted, and so the only answer that I've heard to answer that question of why does astrology work when the sky has moved or we've moved or whatever, the only answer I've really heard that kind of resonates is that because all of humanity believed in it, they just it got set in stone. That like these things
DNA memory in the generations, maybe even it's like, oh, you're being born now, this is what it was like every time someone was born at this time in this genetic line.
Yeah, that we've somehow imbued time, our cataloging of time with these archetypes,
and we just haven't adapted yet. Oh, all right. So we just have to learn how to deal with the new sky.
I know if that oversees it too, like if it's some kind of soul technology that instills something into a soul, or how so many C-sections all of a sudden on a rise, what that would do to somebody's destiny, and they're destined for that, those charts, those planetary aspects. And I'm sure I've thought about that too, of all the C-sections that happen, and how that would, I don't know, just the
scheduled
trauma with
births, you mean?
Yeah.
Or
well,
even in trauma related C-sections, but yeah.
Birth trauma, right? That's the basis of most psychology, or at least psychoanalysis, is dealing with the subject of birth trauma. And so different people have different levels of birth trauma, and they process it in different ways. Throughout their lives were affected by birth trauma, which really, to me, the idea of a natal chart really kind of speaks to that, because all a natal chart really is a snapshot of that moment when you're born. So it's not, when it's not any other phase. It's just that moment. They're like, oh, you know.
Right.
And
Someone-
the best auditors in Scientology are supposed to get that out of you.
Iblis was asking what I
Right.
was hovering over, what I was looking at earlier. I think
first
you
job.
asked, but here's what it is. This is the Sumerian Babylonian calendar, and if you look at it, right, you've got the conceptual cycle, which is the gate year, which is you got 19 of these years, whatever you want to call them, but they make up 19 years, which is the amount of time it takes to have a solar cycle or lunar solar alignment, which is why the Hebrew and the Islamic calendar work on these great 19-year cycles still, even from the ancient Babylonian
One great
calendar.
year is 19 years. That's interesting. COVID-19. And
COVID-19, 19
the sun is
terrorists
the
in September
19th
11.
arcana, right? The sun is 19 in tarot, which is interesting with Corona, crown, sun. Yeah.
19 comes up a lot also in the Quran because it's like the holy number 19. It's like an important number. But one whole year, 12 months of 30 days, right? And this is actually was a 13-month cycle according to some, but then it was forced to be a 12-month cycle because it's easier for math, like you were saying. Although there is a thing, but then you've got these how do you do days, right? So you've got first a month of these days, 30 days based on this ellipses, a certain amount of time that they can, it's like 1 watch, 6 watch, 12 watch, 360 watch. And then so one day is 12 watches of 30 gaze or guess. I don't know how you say that, but 12 watches.
It looks like it's guess to the second power. What is that?
Guess squared. Yeah, guess squared. Right. Yeah. Sorry. So guess times gas. And then a one whole watch is 30 guess of 12 hands cubed, which is 360 hands or degrees. And then you go a little bit further and they show what this is. So what are seconds? And they're using a pendulum to measure a distance to calculate a second. That's supposedly the original. I don't know for sure if that's real, but that's the way they're doing it, at least at a certain point, to calibrate their seconds. Is how long it takes is this amount of time for this size of a thing.
In India, they supposedly did it with breath.
That would make more sense.
So like even the gunas is like this many breaths, and it's like, wow, that's a lot.
Problem is just like how big is an Indian, because there's a Tamil and then there's like the North Indians. So I don't know if that, and then there's giants. Yeah, I think that
sounded like a fudge.
I meant that like objectively.
I get it.
But yeah, and then one whole gaze or guess is 12 hands of 30 grains to the fourth, which is 360 grains or degrees. Let me zoom in there for you. You can see the hands. So 2, 4, right? 1 grain, and then they're measuring in grains, and these are the grains. So pendulum beat. So this is all based on waves and distance and physics, like the amount of swing, 360 grain swing, in distance.
What would be a good analysis, not just the having a natal and the progress charts and doing all of that, but using the Vedic at the same time and then doing cross analysis between your Vedic, which is just the lunar, versus your solar astrology. I imagine that they're completely corollary and complementary. I don't see why those would necessarily have to conflict.
Thoughts, Julia?
God, it's just so crazy how specific the Vedic gets. You could look at someone, like you look and you line them, you group them, and it's like, oh my gosh, they look the same. Like they look the same. It's so specific. It blows my mind. And I don't know much about Vedic. I'm absolutely fascinated by it. Like if you really want to get your mind blown and you want to know about you, get your Vedic chart done.
Right. I got to learn about the 28 nakshatras. That's the thing. I know Giants brought this up before. Nakshatras.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what the nakshatras are?
This is what he was talking.
Indestructible parts of India's Vedic culture. The Vedic system of astrology is divided into 28 nakshatras or lunar constellations. Their use is crucial in astrological study.
Yeah. I think this is what Giant has been studying. It's like the quick
These constellations are based on the
Astrology.
movement of the moon, and therefore the birth of a person is calculated based on the moon's position in any of these stars. Also, the nakshatras are classified under the three broad heads of Dev, divine, Nar, human, and Rakshas,
They haven't
demonic.
changed either.
I think that's interesting. Demonic. That there are demonic. Do you think that they're demonic signs? Maybe not of the 12, but if there's 28.
Yeah, but when you say demonic, what are we saying? We got to have that
people that are
conversation
born on
about
a
King
certain
James
day.
again.
Like they say, your black moon Lilith is like, you know, everything you try to suppress. Like
But there are
whatever
people
your
that
black
are
moon Lilith is in.
committing crimes that were all born on the same day at the same time. Now they're all like psychopaths.
Oh,
like,
is that actually in Jung's book?
Are there astrological
That might
cops?
be in Jung's book. He looks at different people's life circumstances. Actually, the first section of it's not even a long read, but of Jung's an causal principle, synchronicity, where he coins the term synchronicity. In that book, the whole first section of that book is focused heavily on astrology, and he actually looks at, you know, people's birth charts and relationships to what happened in their lives and all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
cool.
it's pretty crazy how he approaches astrology with synchronicity, and like that's like his main initial thing driving him towards synchronicity is totally rooted in astrology. It's pretty crazy.
So Rakshasas seem like bad dudes, usually malevolent demigods, according to the Brahmanda Purana, but they're created by Brahma, and he's a good dude. So the beings springing forth and promising to protect the waters of creation, they are often depicted to be man-eaters. So maybe they're just there for when man is bad. They're like worse. It's like a fallback.
Who's our friend who's so into the Vedas and all that?
Giant Bo.
No, the other one, the other guy who we've had on Think Tank.
Noel.
Yeah. If he was on here right now, he could, if he wanted, keep us talking about that for the next like 40 minutes.
It's true. I'm gonna get him with Sabri pretty soon. We'll get the Tamil, because the other thing I'm interested in is Tamil astrology, because that's different than Vedic, although they do have connections. But the Tamil, I don't know if I can even do this.
Are the tarot decks based on different types of what then? Is it different astrologies that some of the decks are based on? Like
what's that? Tarot? Tarot has there's a standard. So if you're talking about like what's utilized by the Golden Dawn and the OTO and all the European occultists, all the way from Marseille Tarot, they treat it that there's the deacons of astrology play out through all the cards, but specifically the royal cards. So you can go through, and it's what's crazy is that it doesn't actually do it in a totally like linear way, like one would expect. Like as you're moving through the suits, you'd think that they'd somehow be in order, like the order you would assume, but they have their own design, and they meet in a crazy way. So it's really bizarre, actually. So like, for example, one that I trip out on is the Prince of Cups. The Prince of Cups actually meets the King of Wands. And in the deacons connect. So you go from one to the other. And I speculate that that's the reason why in LA Woman, because Jim Morrison was super into tarot and also into astrology, which, you know, he's written about. But when he says, "Why did you throw the Jack of Hearts away?" I think it's actually a reference to the Page of Cups and how that connects to the King of Wands, because the King of Wands is the Lizard King. So the King of Wands in the Rider deck pictures a lizard by the side of the king and an Ouroboros lizard above his head. It's not like an Ouroboros snake. It's actually got the legs. So it's like, so that's the Lizard King. And so when he's saying, "Why did you throw the Jack of Hearts away?" it has tarot implications, because it's like how you arrive at this one point. So he's saying, "I had this and I've moved on to being the Lizard King, but I liked that, so to speak, or that was something that meant something to me, and now it's gone," you know. Also blaming somebody else, which almost feels like he's blaming the universe. It's like, if something changes astrologically for you, who are you going to blame? You know what I mean?
Someone's asking, New Anomaly Productions asking if we could do a demonstrative reading. I don't know where my cards are, but if you
I have mine.
yeah, if anybody wants, does anybody want to do that?
I don't know how to use it. I did it wrong.
I was gonna get Jim
3
King
times. I thought I
Cade.
was like doing these incredible readings, and I was reading the instructions. Everything was so synchronistic. I think I've been doing it wrong the whole time.
Dude, the other day I was trying to
Probably
drive
not
in
a
the
good
snow,
thing to
and
mess
I get in
around
my
with.
car, and
Stellium taught me.
my Crowley Thoth deck is sitting in the passenger seat, just the right angle, and it's kind of open, and just like one card slides out, and it's the death card, and I'm like, really?
Oh God.
Well, remember that the death card
Could
was
I
the
pull a
only-
card for the
only-
chat and then you could analyze it? Does that matter? Would that be cool? Is that bad?
Which one?
If you like pull a card for the chat and be like, "This is,"
Yeah, do that. Go for
does
it.
that work? I don't know how it works. I don't want to
Pull three.
I'm
I don't know
tapping
how
out.
does it
I
work?
quit.
I
remember
what are you
we-
trying to do?
You were doing. You've done live readings before, but it was. Remember that with that dude?
Okay.
I don't want to mess.
Want to do a New Year's reading or something? I'll pull up like, let's say we're doing a reading for like, how do I open your box?
Dang.
Shah, excuse me. Get your mind out of the gutter. All right, IJSS tarot cards. I'm going to do my best.
What are you pulling them with the intent? Don't you have to ask a question?
I'm gonna.
Dude,
I'm gonna
Stellium
ask
told me
a
all
question.
these rules about it.
Rules are lame.
Not rules, just
Do what thou wilt with the cards. So it's the question is humans 2023 what do? Okay. And I'm gonna go with right to left because that's the way I think the rules should be. Okay.
oh my god.
Spoken like a true Hebrew scholar.
I do try. Okay. So we're pulling these open. Here, you want to deal with the box? Like that. Put those away. All right. I don't know how I'm supposed to even show
Well, you took
these.
3.
Is this going to work? I did
Which
the
one was
3.
the first
All
one
right.
you
Does this
took?
work? Can you even
I
see the
usually
cards?
fold
You
out
got the
this
Queen of Cups?
poster
There we go. Let's
that
go.
tells me.
This is,
There's one more. He took 3.
can you see that? That works, right? You can see the
Then
cards
feature
there.
yours and flip it. Flip
So
them
what
all
I got
around.
first is the inverted justice, which is very ironic, and then the Queen of Cups, and then was 2 of Wands, 2 of Rods.
I've never been one for the reversal thing. Like I've seen
Yeah.
a lot of books that talk about that and the treatment of it and readings and stuff, but it's never resonated with me because I've always felt like the opposites are already contained within the cards in the first place. So you're like, this is the opposite of something that's already has opposites. Like I could, I don't know.
Well, I think it doesn't have to be a bad thing, is all. So like the inversion, I think it's like important in my opinion, but it's not. It doesn't mean like injustice, right? Because injustice isn't the opposite of justice.
You got
It's
the
maybe
Queen
more
of Cups.
I got the Queen of Cups.
Don't
Yeah.
you draw the Queen of Diamonds, boy? She'll beat you if she's able. The Queen of Hearts is always your best friend. Hearts is cups.
Interesting.
Diamonds are discs. Swords are spades, and clubs are wands.
Queen of Hearts.
So this, like a tarot deck is 78 cards. Regular playing card deck is 52 cards. The difference between the two is the 22 major arcana plus 1 extra in tarot for the royals.
Dude,
So
so
there's
she's
4,
like
yeah.
the Mary of Bath drinking heart blood out of cups. Is that what I kind of feel like that's what it's about now?
Cards. Is
What?
that like not 3?
You can do a 10 card. You can do there's like the whole thing.
There's a 3 card.
I'm a
like
3
1
card person. Who has
3 card
time?
stud.
Do you guys have time to do more than
You know
3
what?
cards when you pull
Crowley
tarot?
actually said, I believe it was that you're supposed to devote, I think, about 14 hours to any one tarot reading, like minimum, if you really want to do
You
it.
are
So,
in violation.
This guy. Yeah, well, Crowley said a lot of things. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, well, he did
you're
that
not
too.
getting into any of those clubs. You don't remember.
No,
I'm
that's the
not
thing. I think you
knocking on
can't.
those doors,
That's why I don't do it that often, actually, and especially right before bed. But I do think that I like to read horoscopes after the day is done, kind of the way Amelia was talking. Like, hey, is this affecting me? So wouldn't it be nice to read it later and be like, oh yeah, that was, but I didn't let it change my destiny. I like that a lot of the time better. It's an important day. I don't like to read my astrology. And then with tarot cards, yeah, now the rest of the night's gonna be one. You see a death card before you drive, you're gonna be wondering for the next 14 hours.
See,
anyway,
but what I wanted to tell you, and you probably knew this already, but the death card, what we call the death card in tarot, in Marseille tarot, where it came from, it was the only unnamed major arcana. So there's nothing written on that card. It's only with the Rider Waite and later that you have death.
Right. It could have been birth or revealing or
well,
new.
It's Nun, but yeah, I mean it is what it is. But I mean,
it is what it is. What's Nun?
It's not what it's not. Nun is the letter correspondent to death, which is also Scorpio.
Scorpio. It does look like a little scorpion. Look at that. I never thought about that.
I was always like aggressively guided and instructed. Like I'm not allowed to pull tarot, like at all. And like one time, like this guy, he was like, "Oh yeah, you know, you're a seer. Like, let me, you know, I want you to. If you're psychic, you'll pull cards." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not allowed to." And I pulled cards for him, and because he was like trying to act like I wasn't able to do it, and he was like antagonizing me, and so I pulled him. And then as I was doing, he's like, "You know what? Just do your thing. Like, do what you normally do." And there were sunglasses there, and like I moved it and made like light go on it, and I went, you know, and did my thing. And then it showed me like all kinds of things. Like it showed me like a 97, 90, a 96, 97 or 98 Volkswagen Jetta that was vibrating, and like and all this other stuff. And then it turned, and then like really intimate stuff. And basically he's like, well, my cousin passed away. He had a 97 Jetta and he had a system in it, and he would listen to West Coast rap. And I used to idolize him and want to be like him. And I would visit him in France every summer. And he passed away, but like, and it showed me all this other stuff. So
wow,
it was just interesting that, like, you know, I don't know if I was instructed not to, because they didn't want me to rely heavily on like the cards, and you like you're a seer, you see, like you got to focus on that, like keep doing that. But it was like profound, you know.
My favorite commercial of all time is a Jetta commercial.
Really?
And it's where the person's driving along, and it's like everything is in sync with the music. So it's like the windshield wipers, somebody tosses some trash, it's like everything. And then at the end of the commercial, it says, sometimes everything just comes together. And it was like, it was Volkswagen Jetta. And I was
that's
like,
an Uber
nice.
sync. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful though. I mean, you look at this stuff and it's true. It's nice that the Crowley death card doesn't mean that, but at the end of the day, the other stuff doesn't mean what we think either. So
the death card becomes the death card because of the Saudi Star issue. So like all of the way that he's named his cards are dependent upon his particular treatment of those arcana as they. So basically, he's Jimmy rigged another name. So there's the name itself, which is the original alphabet as we know alphabet. Like there's pictographs, there's hieroglyphs, there's all that. But when you have the introduction of the Hebrew alphabet, you have like, you know, it's yes, it has these roots, pictographic roots, Phoenician and the Chaldean and whatnot. But it's now become its own thing. So I would say, like, if you're looking at like the I Ching, you're looking at a very pure mathematics. You're looking at an arrangement of that, what make up the hexagrams, because a hexagram, why is the hexagram a sacred shape? Why do we say sacred geometry? Well, the hexagram is significant, just like the star tetrahedron, because you can extrapolate all the platonic solids from this single figure. And so what the I Ching actually shows you with its 64 hexagrams is every possible arrangement of actually, you know, so it takes 6 straight lines and 6 broken lines to form a star tetrahedron in space. So the hexagrams are really 6 straight lines and 6 broken lines squeezed into a single 6 figure. And how many different arrangements of that binary code you can have. And so this relates to like biology and how cells divide, because when we get to 8 cells, we have that geometry, which is a perfect vector metric, meaning every vector within the figure is the exact same length. And so when you're looking at tarot, then according to the European mystery schools, you can say what you want to, you know, what the traditionalists might say from different schools is one thing, but generally speaking, for the mystery schools, they treat it that the tarot is cognate with tetragrammaton and the Kabbalistic tree of life. And so the Kabbalistic tree of life is a geometry that's literally the same thing that we see with the I Ching, but the I Ching is the treatment of a sphere. Is if you're applying pressure to a sphere from all sides, if you introduce distortion into any point, how is that sphere going to compensate with its vectors to meet that distortion? And so with tarot, they take it to another level, because you're doing the same thing, but it's actually relating to language, because this is now alphabet. And so the alphabet is numerical. The numbers are letters, like they're no different. And so Sephirot, what make up the Kabbalistic tree, are actually translates as numeration. So it's literally how things come into form, but how to create through your speech. That's abracadabra, right? That's Hebrew. That means to create as you speak. And so that's what tarot speaks to. So you're literally looking at what was a sphere now pulled apart into two. It's dividing itself. It's like a cell. It's like a cell dividing, but it's showing how language itself is an extension of that same biological process. That there's actually something, it's strange to say, but biological developmentally that language actually assists in, that there's something.
I was
else
today's years old when I learned that hocus pocus is called abracadabra in Spanish. I didn't know that.
Do you prefer to have a I Ching reading or a tarot reading, David, personally?
Do I?
Yeah.
I think somebody else should get a reading right now.
Not right now. I'm just saying in general. Have you gotten an I
Oh.
Ching and a tarot? What did you feel resonated most? Because I did both. I learned the I Ching. I spent like
I like
2
I
weeks
Ching and
studying how to
runestones.
like do that, and I was throwing coins and I was marking in my book. And
Yeah.
it was.
I
seems
just do
really
facade.
accurate, but-
You guys ever go to facade.com/iching? This is my.
yeah, then I did that too. But I'm just
This is a
asking
piece of
David
cake.
which one he thinks, or if there's one that's more accurate. Same with everybody.
I don't think it's a matter so much of accuracy as in they'll show you they're two very different ways of relating to different things. So like I don't treat any of this for myself as fortune telling. So like I don't, you know what I mean? Like I just treat it the way that Jung treated it. I'm very resonant with Jung's approach to tarot, because it's very much like just relating to archetypes that that you can only point to. So like that's one of the in Man and His Symbols, which not Man and His Symbols, or was it Man and His Symbols? It is Man and His Symbols. Yes, excuse me.
Carl Jung in the Jungle.
People say that it's not really a Jung book. Like I believe he did the introduction and he has a chapter in it. But his chapter in Man and His Symbols actually speaks to one of his biggest frustrations with even some of his closest students after years, was that distinction with the archetypes, that archetypes are not like the subconscious is subconscious. Like they'll say sometimes like make the unconscious conscious, but they don't. But when it comes to the subconscious, they're like, that's its nature. So in other words, like when you're having a dream, it's much different than when you're analyzing the dream, right? So like in the moment that you analyze it, you're making a representation of it, and that representation is never the thing. So like the archetypes remain elusive in that way, and you can never actually pinpoint them, and they're not anything like stable. Like they're not there's something that's actually more like fluid and elastic, and you can't like pin them down because they're actually alive. And so like that's the thing. And so like when we talk about like our shadow or our unconscious, it's like that remains unconscious. Like you can communicate what's happening with your shadow and represent that, but the description isn't the described. And so in that way, Jung also kind of is very resonant with Krishnamurti, because both of them would acknowledge that. They'll talk, except the difference is that Jung will go on for days talking about the symbolism and all this stuff, whereas Krishnamurti like didn't even want to bother with it,
Interesting.
Philosophy of the Upanishads correspond to psychology that long ago recognized the relativity of the gods. This is not to be confused with a stupid error like atheism.
Because I think maybe here when he's saying atheism, because this is the thing, you have to qualify your terms. Big difference between types of atheists. I'll meet atheists who are like, I don't know if there is a God. And then you'll have atheists who are like, there is no God, and they feel really strongly about it.
Isn't that just somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about? So like an atheist is somebody like Spinoza who believes that there's not a Dios, like not an anthropomorphic personification of I like to say single parent who writes books, God, right?
Right, but
Whereas,
that's what Jews technically believe as well.
right, that's the thing. Spinoza was in Holland. There's a lot of Arabs and Jews, and they talked about this mosaic arabesque that was this celestial bureaucracy that man's in the image of, not that God's in the image of man, which is
You ever
silly.
seen that early Ryan Gosling film called The Believer?
Oh, I love that. I mean, no. What are you talking about?
Okay,
Is
so
that-
the thing is yeah.
Where he
Go for it.
finds out he
Yeah.
actually is the son of Ken. No, Barbie, Klaus Barbie.
Gosh.
He's a Disney kid too.
Do you guys know about Klaus Barbie? That was a bad. Yeah. There was a Barbie, and his name was Klaus
Anyway.
Barbie, and he was a Nazi. All right. Anyway, back to the believer.
So he says something in this movie where he's Jewish, but he's playing the role of hanging out with these white supremacist Nazis, and they
He
don't know
doesn't
that
like that he's Jewish because he's kind of kicked out of the group. It's kind of a play on Hitler because Hitler's,
Sure.
mother wasn't Jewish, his father was.
Right. And so there's this whole resentment that this character has. But at one point he's like,
can't be
they
a club.
catch him because he's talking stuff about their religion. He's like, you got to know your enemy. You can't just fight your enemy. You have to know your enemy. He's like, I really know my enemy. And so, but he says at one point, he goes, their God is nothing. Do you know that they worship
Why
nothing?
is this not a Ryan Gosling?
And so what it is that when Moses goes to look at God, his eyes are covered and all he can see is God's back parts because you can't look on the face of Hashem. It's just not possible. Why is that? Because I am that I am has sent me. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that's the thing. It's like, you can't see yourself. You know what I mean? You can see everything but that. Like, the senses are all directed outwards. You can direct your senses inward. That's meditation. That's the real religion. But it's just, it's funny the way he says that because like, there's truth to it. Like, that is it. Because they say no image, no representation. What do we see? What are churches? Even synagogues, excuse me. I think that was one of Jesus's criticisms, which is so funny that then we would have church as we have it following that, where it's like his advice is not to make any graven image, just like the Old Testament. Yet, what do we do but put images everywhere?
That's also what's interesting about the movie The Believer, right? Because he ends up trying to build. Basically, isn't it like his family died in a pogrom or something like his dad? I don't know. Like, now he goes into a church that's about to be destroyed. Spoiler alert! And he's going to do the mitzvah. He's going to finish the ritual, reading the Torah and taking care of the Torah as it's falling apart. So it's, because that's the thing. It's like he's upset that he was never a part. He was never initiated.
So there's a crypto Nazi the whole movie.
No, he's like an ardent Nazi who is Jewish and isn't allowed to be a member of the Jewish church.
But he gets accepted at the end, which is the spoiler.
No, he does not get accepted.
That's the spoiler.
I mean, well, yeah, you just asked. So
Damn it.
It's a great movie, though. It's an important movie. I don't know. I wonder a lot about how they got away with that movie.
I love Ryan Gosling. I want to watch this one.
They got away with it because of the time in which it came out. In fact, if they would have tried to come out with The Believer now, I don't think it would.
They couldn't do it.
That used to be my
Nobody would
Xbox Live
believe it.
gamer tag. Like, my gamer tag motto was like, "Know thy enemy."
Hmm.
I mean, the atheist is different than the agnostic. The agnostic is just like doesn't have the knowledge. Gnostic, right? So, ag. So I don't know. I think that we think about like Spinoza. Spinoza said, "Hey, I'm an atheist because I believe that there's something else than a deity. It's something beyond that, or more than that, or different than that." And I think that's fair. I think that's what atheism should be. If I met a real atheist,
the thing though, because like I'll listen to like Ricky Gervais podcasts for like and it's so long-winded, and he'll be having this kind of debate on because he considers himself an atheist, and it kind of drives me nuts that they don't ever really seem to really qualify what do we mean when we say this. And like I mean, I think that's what I was kind of saying about the Bill Maher Religulous, which I saw that when it came out, I guess. I don't know, but it's just you're not qualifying your terms. You're just, and it's the same thing with freaking who's that famous atheist who wrote the book The God Deception or whatever. I actually read the guy, shouldn't remember what his freaking name was. Not
Dawkins.
Yeah, Dawkins.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So like but like Dawkins, he would call himself in like a staunch atheist or whatever. But it's like, dude, like he doesn't even bother to qualify. And in the book that I had to look, because I used to have this gay housemate who was like really against the church. That's the only reason why not just saying he's gay just because he's gay. No, this is context. He was really he had a problem with the church, and we would get in these debates on God. And then it was, I'm basically telling the same story as with Amy with the Carl Sagan thing, because I was like, what are you reading? Like, and he's like into Dawkins, and always talking about Dawkins stuff. So I was like, dude, loan me a book. Let me look at it. I read the freaking book, God Deception or whatever. Is like 2009. And I was like, dude, I'm reading this book. This guy I'm going chapters and chapters and chapters. I'm like, he still hasn't even fucking qualified his terms of what he's saying when he talks about God. And I'm like, yeah, you can't define God. I appreciate that. But if you're going to attack the very notion of a God, then tell me what that notion that you're attacking is. It was like through the whole thing, it was just assumed. I'm like, do you believe in energy? Where can we start to determine what you do believe? You know what I mean? Like,
you ever see that movie 12 Monkeys with Bruce Willis, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, all I
so
see
like,
are
at the
dead
beginning
people.
of the movie is these nightmares. He's like, I've had these recurring nightmares my whole life. And it started when I was a kid. I saw this airport, and this guy dies in the airport, and I just can't stop thinking about it. And then eventually he becomes the guy in the airport. Right. That is Charles Dawkins.
But this
Whatever,
is the
like
same...
10, 20, 40-year-old movie. Spoiler alert, like Jesus is crucified in the Bible.
Movies of
Spoiler
all time
alert, Jesus comes back in the Bible.
This is
Spoiler
the
alert,
same
just for horses.
quality that, like, this rejection, the outright, you know, like that. Look at his face. Like, he's so sure of
He
himself.
became the vicar of the church.
That tie
He
is
was like-
everything.
But that's the same thing
His nightmare.
as the rejection of astrology, because
Cool tie.
it's not coming from an informed place. And
Honestly, that tie makes up for a lot. It's a pretty good tie.
yeah.
Yeah, but he sucks. It's true. I don't know. I like the South
does
Park.
he
South Park's
say?
on the South Park Dawkins thing was exactly like what you
I'm thinking it as I'm talking about it. And it's like every time I talk about him, I have to visualize him having sex with Mr. Garrison, and it's just really weird.
Thank God they did that. Actually, what's funny is like I watched the DVD when that came out, and they had the director's commentary, and they said literally almost verbatim the same thing you said. Like, we were reading his book because someone sent it to us because we were like, who is this Dawkins guy? We're interested in atheism because we're doing this. And then he was just for 9 chapters, just nonsense. I was like, get him. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, thank you. No, I haven't seen that. I'd like to see anything from those guys like that. I like their like 10 days to air, 7 days to air, or whatever that was. That was great.
You have a documentary. Are you talking about Trey Parker? Man.
Oh, yeah. I do have the metaphysical South Park. That's true. You've seen that, right?
He's got a cut of the document or the independent film they did when he broke up with his girlfriend.
When Trey Parker broke up with his girlfriend,
he made a mockumentary.
Yeah, the third,
which reminded me of that movie we watched. What was it with? The David recommended from Think Tank with the guy that he's mentally retarded and he gets the upgrades.
You mean the Lawnmower Man?
Yes.
You guys seen Lawnmower Man?
The Lawnmower Man reminded me of the Trey Parker character from the independent film.
All right, tell us about Lawnmower Man from your perspective. What is Lawnmower Man, Brittany?
Me?
Yeah, you're the one who saw it. You're talking about it. Spoiler alert, it's about a Lawnmower Man.
I think you get away with making it today.
Was this actually a Stephen King thing?
I think you guys talked about it in Think Tank, and I was like, I've never seen Lawnmower Man. I thought it was a horror movie. And Andres is like, not exactly. And then I was like, yeah, that's a horror movie.
It's based on the book by Stephen King. It's an original screenplay titled Cyber God. King's story focused on the titular character, a demon-possessed devil worshiper who strips naked and eats grass like a goat, who can control his lawnmower with mystical powers.
I don't remember.
Not really what the
movie's like. That's not at all what the movie's about.
No, they Kubrickized it.
Yeah. So the movie is about like a Pierce Brosnan who's working on neural link, basically with monkeys, and they're like,
it goes awry.
Tell us how.
Well, one of the monkeys, he breaks free, and he ends up finding a man that's been taken in by the church that is mentally retarded. And once the monkey, dies, they shoot it, and this man gets really upset.
The monkey gives like MK Ultra
Anyway,
activated.
Pierce Brosnan has the great idea to try to help improve the mentally.
If we can do it to a
handicapped-
monkey.
Can I even say this? The show's going to get canceled because I said that. I think I don't even know.
No, they're
I
trying
don't know.
to uplift
But
this guy.
Yeah, it's like it's a struggle between.
He's taking
Is
one
he
of the
noble
lesser.
trying to help someone become able to fend for themselves, or is it because he can't do the experiments on monkeys, so he's doing it on a man that can't really
willing
understand
to
what's going on?
volunteer, and the guy is one of the lesser humans available, and he's going to make them an Ubermensch, and that is the plot of the movie,
Which is
essentially.
based on all the real studies that they used to do from the asylums.
Is the subtext of this the idea that that if the proletariat get what the bourgeoisie have, that they'll do the exact same thing?
He looks like Jay Parker.
I think the thing is he goes beyond what other people are able
don't
to
do
do.
that's a spoiler.
Yeah.
Just you have to watch it and see everybody.
I don't think
it's been a long time, but I have seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the elite like to have other people drive their cars. I think that they like to have sorcerers do stuff for them because it's exhausting. Magic and like potion mixing and memorizing formulas. You know, why would you just pay someone else?
That was a segue. We were talking about Trey Parker, I believe.
Are we looking at a picture of Trey Parker just then?
Yeah, that wasn't. That was the Lawnmower Man.
Is weird sync. Is Trey Parker's '90s persona literally just an homage to Lawnmower Man? And
I don't know. I feel like that movie. When I go, is this a comedy? You're like, no. I'm like, this is a comedy. Look what he's wearing. He's wearing overalls and a neon. The Lawnmower Man is.
You have to watch the director's cut. The director's cut's on YouTube, and it's a little bit more serious. I think when they realized what it looked like, they tried to cut it differently. They were like, no one's gonna.
I think this we watched the director's cut. We watched the extended scenes. Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Was this the same people involved in Lawnmower Man that did the Mind's Eye video? I met.
The Mind's
Eye. I knew one of those guys, Andrew something.
It was the Mind's Eye. Seen that? Is it like a horror film?
No. Oh, the Mind's Eye from the 90s. It was like it was like the big selling for like computer generated imagery. I mean, this was like when this came out, I mean, it was kind of a big deal or whatever.
I haven't watched this. I feel like I missed it. That's really sad. This is going to be something I'm going to spend a lot of time on projected while playing synthesizers. Is this like a reference to the Terracotta Soldiers? What are they doing here? You know what I mean?
What are they doing?
Yeah.
I have some weird.
It was like a demonstration on just like what at that time computer imagery was capable of. And so the guy,
what would you do with it?
Worked on this. He went on to do. Have you ever seen Alien 4, Alien Resurrection?
Resurrection. Yeah.
There's like the swimming alien. It's kind of the coolest part of the movie. So like this guy did that. That was like he was like the head of that part of the movie, and he actually got to meet H.R. Giger, and he has a crazy story where he spent like weeks at H.R. Giger's house, but every night it was like the same thing where it'd be like, we're going to the bar. And then the first night thought that they're going out to go to the bar, but then they just went into H.R. Giger's crazy room with all the biomechanical furniture and like his paintings all around him.
He held him down and
at the house, and they did ecstasy and
oh my God,
drank whiskey into the night, just conversating on ecstasy. And then like, at a certain point, it's like, okay, that's the end of the night. And then the next day, what are we doing tonight? And he's like, we're going to the bar. And then they just do the same thing again and again and again and again. And he's just like every night he just goes to the bar with H.R. Giger. And he was like, I guess that's just what it's like to hang out with H.R. Giger is you just do ecstasy and drink whiskey at his bar surrounded by his artwork.
That seems like a reasonable thing. I mean, he's trying to get you into his, I'll get you on Geiger level, so you can do the art. I feel like that's a hard thing to do. I mean, Jodorowsky, right? So that's the whole thing. Jodorowsky got him to flush out Dune, I think was the original plan of the movie.
It looks like
you can still see it in Lynch's version. It feels like there's an H.R. Giger influence there.
Yeah, for sure.
Documentary about that.
Doesn't it look like?
Yeah, Jodorowsky's Dune. Sorry, I spelled that wrong. There you go. It's like there's a Kickstarter documentary. Did you see that?
Yeah, we watched that.
Yeah, that's really good.
The greatest movie never made.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a question. What's, this is Prince versus Michael Jackson here. What's the greatest? Jodorowsky's Dune versus Death of Superman with Nicolas Cage, which was going to be nuts. You know about this?
They were going to do a movie out of the Doomsday Superman.
Yeah, it was going to be, and there's a documentary on it. So Kevin
What?
Smith was going to write it, and because at the time they weren't sure about, it, and they're like, this guy could be serious. You know, it's the '90s. He might be like a serious guy. He knows about comic books. He wrote that thing where they like jerk off about comic books or something in Mallrats. So they gave him the job. He wrote the script. The producer was, what's his name? You know, like
Jerry Seinfeld.
Tim Burton and Tim Burton's buddy, the guy who was like the hairdresser for Barbara Streisand. And, you know,
Oh,
so he goes to his house and Kevin Smith's supposed to tell him the plan. And the hairdresser's like lying on the couch and he makes a little movie screen with his hands. He's like, tell me, go. And then Kevin Smith's supposed to tell him the story. And as he starts to tell him, he's like, no. It's like, what? It's like, well, there's some ground rules here if we're going to make a Superman movie. First off, no cape. What? No cape. It's faggy. I don't like it. Like, really? Like, yeah. No, we're not going to do it. It's like, but Superman? No cape. My movie. Okay. And then the second thing is he doesn't fly. I don't want to see him fly. Can he have like a vehicle? Maybe he can have like a plane. I don't want to see him flying around. He can be super strong. He can jump. He can jump really high. How high? Over a building? Maybe. We'll talk about it. So like this is like the ground rules, right? And then the third one, which is the most important thing above all else, that the movie has to end with a giant freaking spider. And if the spider isn't in the movie, there's no movie.
What does he want? A giant baby bottle too? These are weird requests.
That's what Kevin Smith was thinking. But he's like, I get to make Superman. And she's like, who's gonna play him? And he's like, I don't know. And then he's like, Nick Cage. Like, really? Like, yeah, he's perfect for it. Like, you want Nick Cage to play Superman? I think he could.
I think Nick Cave would probably be better, but yeah.
They're like,
did
Nick
Cage name his son after like Superman, like Kal-El or whatever?
Yeah. Because like there's a whole, and he was gonna do it. He was gonna be, because in the whole thing was because he saw a Valley Girl and he's like, look into his eyes.
Oh my god.
He's Superman.
We're looking at Peggy Sue Got Married right now. Is that what this
Say it
is?
again?
We're looking at Peggy Sue Got Married right now.
No, this is from Valley Girl. Do you ever watch Valley Girl?
Valley Girl. Okay.
Valley Girl is my favorite Nick Cage movie.
He's got that same look where he's just like this
bold statement.
This bizarro world James
Favorite
Dean.
movie?
Nick Cage movie. And all of them, I think it's probably Valley Girl. Yeah. So good. Dude, he's from Hollywood and she's from the Valley.
But
It'll
that
never
new
work.
One was pretty good.
I don't know.
See that one where he kills all the Chuck E. Cheese type characters?
Yeah, that one was good.
Where he doesn't speak a word the entire movie.
I like the Japanese thing.
Nicolas Cage movie is when he doesn't speak a word through the whole thing. That's the best one.
Honestly, even Wicker Man's grown on me. Just like I just want to like remix him. Bees. It's just a good thing. But
I feel the same way about Nick Cage. Ever since Wind Talkers, when that accent just was so bad.
I was
in like, I don't even know, I was in high school. I was like, that's it. I'm done with Nick Cage.
I think you're going.
Why would he didn't like, he couldn't even keep up that.
Dude, this is how far they went. They made the suit. He was ready to go.
You know what?
That's somebody that had their sign wrong. Like for years, he thought he was a dragon or a bunny. Like, and he spent so much money buying all that stuff, and then he found out, like, oh no, that's not your, Chinese zodiac. You're actually a rabbit.
Really?
But, yeah.
That's amazing. Remy's a rabbit dragon. Oh yeah, there's already a meme about it, so it must be.
It must be true.
Spent so much money.
Dude, I feel this is relevant. Yeah, I don't like Nicolas Cage. That's why.
Oh wait, show your pillow.
Oh yeah, no, wow.
Yes. Like, is that sequin too?
Yeah, no,
it's a sequin.
It's a red pillow. You would never know.
You can hide Nick
Cage.
And just pull it up
in a banana. It's like a Velvet Underground thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a thing for bananas and not Nick Cage.
Nick Cage and bananas at the same time.
It's like something I love, something I hate.
My buddy,
I don't hate Nick Cage.
My buddy Wes has a bunch of Nicolas Cage pillows on his bed, and my other friend Brent dropped him off one time and went into his bedroom and saw the Nick Cage pillows, and he was like, "Wes, are you gay?" And he was like, No, not that there would be anything wrong with that, but no, I just really like Nicolas Cage. And he was like, "Oh, okay." It's like, huh? Is there? Why do you? Oh, because he's like Nicolas Cage is like topless, like on the pillow, just like stretched out, and he's all.
Nothing wrong with that. Who doesn't like Nick Cage? I mean,
guess I'm not so weird for having
so
this.
I'll just finish this stupid rant because like it's now I'm not gonna be able to sleep unless I explain like why did they not get to have a Superman? Because like this is the thing, which is better, the Dune Jodorowsky movie, which we all wanted to see, which would have been amazing, or the Nick Cage Superman. And we're sized up with like, what do we know about it? Okay, so John Peters, the Barbra Streisand hairdresser who was gonna make this movie, who demanded that there be a giant spider, right? And he didn't get to make this movie. Doesn't happen. We know that, but he goes on to make another movie with Barry Sonnenfeld called Wild Wild West.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And so if you remember,
that's why we have
Wild
the giant
Wild
spider.
West, the giant freaking spider. Right?
Just so you could do that?
Yeah, but I gotta wonder because Wild Wild
Bro.
West is so good.
I bet you it's a Kenneth Grant thing, because Kenneth Grant had that book, the Book of the Spider thing. I bet
Oh,
you
yeah.
he's
They
just
tried
got
to
all
force
into
it
it, and he
into
was just like,
Spider-Man.
"Oh yeah, the fucking book." Yeah, it's so bad. If you're, I'm not recommending this book, or anything by Kenneth Grant for that matter. Really, if you're serious about occultism, and their books are all so expensive because they're so rare. There's just really limited publications, and
Barbra Streisand's hairdresser.
I torrented like a ton of the Kenneth Grant books at one point because I was like, these books are worth thousands of dollars. People are paying so much money for this, for this occult jargon here from Kenneth Grant, who took over the OTO years later as a successor of Crowley, right? And so I thought that there would be some meat there, and it was just like the guy just fudged his gematria left and right. He just made shit. He manipulated stuff to make it mean what he wanted it to mean and whatever. But people are really into it, so it wouldn't surprise me. I'm just saying, for real, if this director just got into Kenneth Grant, paid thousands of dollars for his Book of the Spider rare book, and was just like, oh yeah, this is it.
I mean, Will Smith decided not to make The Matrix so that he could make Wild Wild West.
Was he going to be Morpheus?
Yeah, he was going to be Neo, Keanu Reeves.
Neo.
Keanu Reeves is a backup. They're like, well, okay, well, we got
Wow.
Keanu is available. That's how that happened. It was supposed to be really different. It would be really amazing. Imagine this whole movie with like a bunch of kung fu, hip hop, because he probably would have done Will Smith would have done the songs. Think about it.
Right, but
The
you know
Matrix
what?
would have been
It
so
would have been the
different.
musical.
It would have been like Men in Black. He would have been
Supposed to be what that woman freaking sued
Why
Warner
don't they
Brothers
redo it?
over before they settled.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, think about so Sophia Stewart, who says she wrote the movie and settled with
But also the Terminator, right, Julia?
and the
Yeah.
Terminator.
Mhm.
Terminator and
she's saying
Matrix,
that
same.
it's the prequel to the Matrix, that the Terminator, that they came back, they knew that the Son of God was going to be born. That's why they sent the Terminator in to prevent that from happening. Like, oh, let's go back, and then like John Connor, JC, Jesus Christ.
She wrote it, and then the two
Well, so-
brothers that are
And
now
she wrote the
Lana
book called The
directed
Third
it.
Eye. The Third
Larry
Eye.
Wachowski, who became Lana Wachowski, and was that dead? Maybe I'm not trying to do it, but I think everybody knows because they still have the old names on the old titles in the old movies, right? So that's another question. Like, do old copies of the Matrix dead naming Lana Wachowski and the Wachowski sisters? Because I used to have to call them siblings until they both transitioned,
Right.
which is amazing and cool. But the mother of the Matrix, Sophia Stewart, she was in a writing club with both of them, and I think Larry, or now Lana, she's the one who stole Sophia's work, and because they were doing some sort of like multiple person sharing what they were working on stuff. So
Are they
went
huge into VR?
They're
Like,
into video games, comic books,
Oculus
anime, VR.
necessarily, but like some like advanced VR shit. I bet you they are.
I mean, you would hope so because they made that
just-
video game, but I don't know for sure. I would imagine that they were really into it, then they would have made more like effort to be in the scene of that.
This
because
could
you have made
but they have, like, I don't know if they still do or whatever, but they founded this secret, like, what do you call it? Like, it's like a psychological detox program. And so like I knew a guy who went to it with his girlfriend, and they won't let you tell anybody afterwards what it is that actually went on. Like, you're not allowed to talk about the actual process that takes place because it's part of it working, is that you keep it to yourself. But they have water containers all along these halls, like, so like you get a little paper cup and like a fucking water jug, and their slogan is that there's nothing in the water. And so if you go to this facility and you're staying there for an extended period, you're going to be drinking the water. And so it's like this whole thing of like, they're like, there's nothing in the water. There's nothing in the water. And so anyway, my friend claims that he had a major breakthrough with them. This was in early 2000s. And his girlfriend Cinnamon actually ended up leaving him for a girl, and it just like devastated him, and his ego was just fucking rocked. So I always kind of felt like, oh, he went to this facility to have some healing, and then he tried to, you know, it's like when people go to yoga centers to try and escape it all, and then they end up being like more dramatic than anybody in the regular world, you know. It kind of felt like maybe it was one of those things, like he thought he was gonna, you know, get to the other side of something, just ended up, I don't know.
Yeah, careful with the Vipassana thing. You know, I was hungry for a while. But
did you do Vipassana?
Yeah, like the 12-day thing where you're not allowed to eat.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to eat for Vipassana?
You give you banana.
What?
And
was it Vipassana though? Was it the official
Gosh,
Vipassana thing, or was it a meditation?
Yeah, it was like a 12-day meditation retreat through the Vipassana yoga thing. I don't know, but it was like
I did
12 days of
10
like sitting there.
10 hours a day for 10 days, but I had food. They gave us food. It's all, you know, it's all free too.
Like
you just show up there. You don't have to pay a dime for it.
It was free, but it was like fasting. We were supposed to have like
It was free to not get food.
Wow. Oy vey. But yeah, the Wachowski siblings, I wonder about this because of the Rosicrucian thing, right? Because like into the esoterics, like they get to a certain age, and now they're like Hitler did this where he put one hand behind his back at a certain point, so he started using the other hand to switch over. Like maybe they're living two lives. Maybe there's some kind of a this doesn't feel like the same kind of transitioning as someone who feels like they've lived their whole life. Maybe, but did they? I mean, the one who was, you know, he seems like he was pretty masculine, and then he decided after his brother went that he was going to do the same thing, which is a hormone treatment. So it changes.
I think she just did that to be in solidarity, you know.
Maybe. I don't know.
Like, you know,
I imagine you probably live a lot longer. You'd probably get a lot less cancer because women get less cancer. There's probably a lot of health benefits. I mean, imagine if you're immortal, the trade-off is you have to be a woman. That might be some like Egyptian magic thing.
So the ceremony is to detox or to transgender?
Which ceremony?
That these people went on.
Which ceremony?
The psychological detox.
Oh, what I was talking about, that has nothing to do with the this is early 2000s too. So they hadn't transitioned for until years later. And this just came basically what my friend Yoshi told me was that you know, that this was an organization that was founded by the Wachowskis, if I'm pronouncing that right. Is it Wachowski? What do we got?
I don't know, but Vipassana was not founded by the Wachowskis. Bro.
Absolutely not. But Vipassana does not have a long lineage. That's like two people. It's funny, after you do Vipassana, they show you the great line of how many, you know, this is the real teaching of the Buddha, but it goes back 2 generations, if that. So.
Really? Okay. Now I feel gypped. That's great.
Oh, whatever.
Glad I understand the ceremony.
What's that other one that's really weird that Thomas was talking about? The prison, like Ekankar. Ekankar. Have you heard of this guy or whatever, this group? Ekankar.
Sounds familiar.
They're like a religious movement, and apparently they get into the prison systems a lot, and they try to get people to become members of in the prison.
Yeah, so does Vipassana too, in Mississippi even.
This is the Temple of Ek in Chanhassen, Minnesota.
Oh,
interesting.
To go visit.
It's a weird step pyramid.
Weird.
But they're into astrology as well. They was founded by this dude named Paul Twitchell. Let me see if I can find his picture. And he stole a bunch of like Eastern religious stuff and converted it and created this like Euro Ekankar thing. But supposedly it's like a Freemason adjacent group that tries to clean up people, like to get people that are they could be rehabilitated, you know, in the prison system, and then try to get them onto some kind of path that they can use them for, you know, benefit. I don't know. Some of these cults that are interested also in astrology, like the Baha'i or religion.
We were just talking about Baha'i. Yeah.
They have their own calendar, and they have an astrology for that as well.
Yeah, what was the thing? Do you remember what that was, Amelia? We were talking about Baha'i recently?
Baha'i.
We were joking about the Baha'i, but yeah, no, what was
I don't remember why.
Okay.
Could have been astrology for
why that came up exactly. No, I don't think it was astrology. It's something to do with their particular belief system, and something that I'd retained. I stayed with some people who were of the Baha'i faith that had like a wall of books of Baha'i. Speaking of which, I think that was something too with Rudolf Steiner. So I stayed with these grandmothers in the desert that were all students of Rudolf Steiner. And when did this come up? This came up recently because, you know, if you look up his what books he's written, it online, it's like pretty limited. But I saw in person like a wall of books by Rudolf Steiner. And so from what I gather, it's that those are for you know, his students or whatever. Like, this is not widely published material, but I was just amazed at how prolific Rudolf Steiner was. And I would tell people that I was like, Rudolf Steiner's crazy prolific. And then I go to look him up and I'm like, wait a minute here. There's not that many books. Where are they? Oh, they're just not listed, you know.
Well,
in 1917, Rudolf Steiner foresaw a vaccine that would drive all inclination towards spirituality out of people.
He has his out.
Oh, Amelia, you're breaking up. Can you repeat that?
Oh, yeah. His speeches. Rudolf Steiner's. I don't know.
Rudolf Steiner's speeches.
Yeah, he has speeches on his archives too. So it's not just books, but all of his speeches,
his lectures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Plus, Jeremy Irons is like probably his clone, I think. I hope. I mean, the Baha'i are obsessed with the 9 months instead of the 12 because it's the idea of the human gestation, and the Mayans actually use the 9 as well. They have 2 calendars and they're interlocking calendars because you can't live on the 20-year generation calendar all the time, right? So you use the human gestation system. So it's interesting that their astrology is a lot to do with 9 instead of 12, right?
My introduction to Mayan astrology was just with Moon Tribe. So like if I went to a Moon Tribe party on the full moon in Santa Cruz, you know, it was a topic. So like, because there was the people who started Moon Tribe were really into the 13 moon calendar and all the Jose Arguelles type stuff, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Moon Tribe. Definitely knew a lot of people at Moon Tribe that were interested in the Mayan calendar. My thing was like,
this looks like LA Moon Tribe. So we had two factions. Santa Cruz Moon Tribe is much different from LA. In fact, LA is almost all exclusively trance, and we were almost exclusively break beats.
That's true. Yeah, that's really funny. Do you ever go around Burning Man and you're like, I am not on the drugs to be in this tent?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, because the different drugs go with the different music. And so I didn't understand for a long time. I was like, why am I not getting into this dubstep? And then I realized I'm not doing enough ketamine or GHB.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, okay.
You could have realized
it's a different thing.
Though. But
well,
the desert.
Yeah, trance is obviously is acid, right? Yeah. And maybe ecstasy.
I think the Adderall plays into the EDM a lot with the LA scene. I think the amphetamines really do. Yeah, because they have the trance EDM, which is like a faster breakbeat. I see. Right. Also, there's IDUM, right? IDUM is the new intelligent IDUM breakbeat. I don't know. Forget. I'm gonna make a new genre I just came up with called wave shaping. I think it's gonna be.
Ooh. I want a genre called flip flop.
I like it.
It's not quite trip hop. It's not quite hip hop. It's, you know,
it's
a little something in between. All right, but again, with isn't an atheist just a theist because you create a god? Like that's the thing is he's not allowing himself to create a god. This is apophatic. Where'd it go? Apophatic theology. This idea of negative theology formed from theological thinking and religious practices which attempt to approach God. They divine by negation to speak only in terms of what may not be said about the perfect goodness that is called God. So apophatic theology is also like apophatic reduction.
That just sounds like Judaism, and it sounds like Indian philosophy. You know, because in both of those places you have this emphasis on that. You know, there's the thing in itself. That you know, and then there's everything around that thing that isn't that thing that we speak about that thing and carry on as though that description was the thing itself, you know. or that
people get upset about it.
representation, I should say. What's that?
Because people will be like, people say, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that, I don't believe God's like this. And then someone will say, well, what do you believe? But a lot of it should come back to your restraints on what you believe, but your restraints on your belief, not on God itself, because you're talking about something that's beyond restraint, which is the universe or beyond the universe, space, time, and everything in between. And you're just saying, well, I'm going to create these psychological limits for myself on what I'm going to describe. I mean, that is also what astrology is. That's what everything seems to come back to is, our ideas of psychological borders.
Yeah. Well, isn't astrology just kind of like charting territory in a nominal existence? Nominal in the sense that it doesn't stand out as the phenomenal world. I think that was a term that Blavatsky liked to use, is nominal. I always like that, because it's like it's an acknowledgement that doesn't stop at what we relate to as physical form, that deeper in the emanation, that there's still an order there,
Have you guys heard of the Mars effect?
Mars effect.
It's a study. It's a result of a study. The Gokilins. I think it hasn't been disproven.
I was looking into that on like lunar cycles and athletic performance.
The Mars effect is purported a statistical correlation between athletic eminence and the position of the planet Mars relative to the horizon at time and place of birth. This controversial finding was first reported by the French psychologist and neo-astrologer Michel Gauquelin in his book L'influence des astres, The Influence of the Stars. Gauquelin suggests that a statistically significant number of the sports champions were born just after the planet Mars rises or culminates. He also divided the plane of the ecliptic into 12 sectors, identifying 2 key sectors of statistical significance.
Julia, note that for my chart to see.
What do you know about this, Amelia?
If it affects
your Mars is in Scorpio. That's great, because it's ruled by Mars. Brittany, your Mars is in Scorpio. Oh, sorry, Amelia.
Thank you.
That's where it belongs.
That's good. I was born at a good time. Am I
going to be athletic enough?
Yeah. How am I? What does my Mars say about my athleticism?
It's just one of the few. It's one of the few studies that, like, there's not a lot of studies. There's this like weird thing about science that like they don't fund studies
that are really interesting,
that they don't want to find the results of, like,
because then all these people are going to start birthing their children at the same time, or traffic jams
or they already know the results of, and they don't want everyone to know the results of.
True.
So like that's what I was saying the other day about NASA and the freaking trying to disprove helium as a superfluid having levitational abilities. And the argument has always been, if it's used in large quantities in these particular ways with a tube torus, that you could levitate something. But NASA's like, that's ridiculous, we'll show you. And then they have like this mini demonstration where it's like, look, we tried, it didn't work, and you're like, okay, yeah, okay.
See, like, I want to be able to read the astrology not just in someone's face, but in their social security number. I feel like that it's already all in there. They're probably telling you everything you need to know about both that person and their environmental conditional stereotypes that have been set up for them and how they're able to succeed.
Is that kept track of through a computer is what I'm saying? Is that, like, back to my question about the data match that I got?
Lottery air machine with balls flying around.
Our social security numbers do track where we were born.
Yeah.
And
so it's
when
all connected.
I don't think it's just like some random thing with
like the
because it's the time of day you're born. Every baby that's born is not how you number.
Yeah, like every
sequential order.
Like everybody was born. From what I know, like
not sequential.
Like the first 3 numbers is like where you're born. It's
like it has to do with
zip code.
It's a lot like the IBM and the Holocaust.
Oh no!
What are the middle 2 numbers?
But you read this book? You know what I'm talking about? They're
I
like,
know what
hey,
you're talking about. Yeah,
you know, a lot of these American companies, these guys were complicit. Actually, it looks like IBM was complicit. Actually, it looks like the numbers on the arms in the Holocaust came from IBM's computer machines.
It's absolutely true, and it's proven. So it was IBM's punch card system, and so IBM sent representatives from the New York headquarters of IBM to Auschwitz, and they had multiple visits, including when they were at the height of their actual, you know, when they were actually offing people, and it's included in what they're looking at. So them checking on the punch card system involves them seeing people put to death for different punishments for different people and depending. So it was like you had, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses included, gay people.
There's numbers for Joy Division, for gypsies, yeah.
For Joy Division too. I don't know about the punch card system showing Joy Division, but that was a definite. And so the beauty of Joy Division is it just really, say what you will, but the joke is, as far as why I think they named the band that, was because it points out the absurdity of of them believing in eugenics, but then picking out the prettiest Jewish girls to have sex with, the German soldiers. And so it's like, what is your deal actually?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Yeah. So it was pretty brilliant actually to name the band that, and then a lot of the lyrical content actually speaking to similar types of deep dualities, you know, like these contradictions. And, you know, that's why the guy was so troubled, I think, because he was really like geared towards acknowledging like deep contradictions in people and himself probably too, you know. But yeah, so they sent back word to New York that everything was running smoothly. So there's no way in hell that the representatives from IBM, and they collected their earnings after the war, just like GM did, Ford did. So Ford apparently paid for the rail line that went to Auschwitz. And in fact, almost all the German vehicles, or at least a very large amount of the German vehicles, actually had Ford motors inside of them. So Ford assisted in the Holocaust. And they didn't actually hire Jews until well after the 60s, I believe.
Ford's weird. Yeah. There was also some weird stuff. I mean, like, again, with the numbers. So looking at the system, they're able to tell you, like you said, what the numbers represented, which place they came from, how, you know, how large their family was. All this stuff could be right in the number. So I don't think it's too hard to imagine that the Social Security system works similarly. And the punch card system is just because IBM started out as CTC. It was central tabulating.
This is before computers, so it was like the computer is evolved from the punch card system.
Right. Yeah, the IBM census machines were used by every country, to be fair to IBM. And so if you look at Canada, Soviet Union, United States, even before IBM, the parent company, the alphabet of IBM, that was CTC, Central Tabulating Company, they did the cash registers in the Old West that replaced the abacus for a lot of people. And the abacus was greatly used, you know, by the Chinese, the Russians, everybody, up until, you know, the cash register. So, I mean, there's some pretty, it's interesting just watching how they kind of assimilated their way into culture, but how we're all identified by these, you know, the cash registers in the banks, you know, they were using these major banknotes, the encrypted currency that existed at this time through IBM, right? That existed even then. So,
yeah. So also, you know, for Jewish people, you know, you look at a lot of the stuff that went on, and it's really a test to talk about, a test to a faith, because there's always this question, or not always, but for a lot of Jewish people, they're like, where was God during the Holocaust? And so there's this, you know, that, I mean, if you listen to Leonard Cohen, that's like half of what he sings about. If you took the whole of his catalog and just went through it, it's like speaking to that principle, at least, you know.
Yeah, my parents are atheist, and my mom's Jewish and my dad's Puerto Rican. My mom's whole thing was, yeah, I don't think being Jewish is really such a, you know, it's not so good for us. It hasn't seemed to work out so well. So they just wanted to be Americans. And my dad was abused in a Catholic military boarding school. Wow. So when I actually talked about it with him, you know, they were really into, you know, raising us atheist. But when I'd ask him, what do you really think? He wasn't. He was mad.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the natives. The Canadian natives comes up a lot, and the forcible conversion. And so that's the question. Also, it's like, you don't want to be yourself because you're gonna get in trouble for being yourself. But if you become the thing they want you to become, you're literally genocided. You're killing your ancestors, but also, they stare like the Canadian natives. What's it called? Residential schools. They were sterilizing kids, and they're just bones buried, cutting off their hair, letting the turtle shells fall to the ground. So, I mean, I feel like this. I think about this when we think about oh yeah, our parents and our grandparents had changed their names to become American, to assimilate, to keep their heads low. It's
my mom doesn't know her actual last name because her father changed his last name after he had a ticket showing that he was going to New Zealand, and he didn't have a ticket showing he was coming back because he was a stowaway on a ship. And he got caught on the ship, and they beat the shit out of him to the point where he almost died. And he changed his name afterwards because it was a very Jewish last name. And so I don't know what that last name is, and neither does my mom.
And so, yeah, on one hand, you're be yourself, but on the other hand, remember what happens to people that are themselves. So, sometimes, I get it, where you want to be discreet or try to not be flashy with data or wisdom or anything that your people have, because people get mean about it.
Well, as they were beating him, they were saying extremely anti-Semitic things to him, and so that was the fear. Was he's like, I don't know what the future is going to be for my family being Jewish.
Yeah,
they didn't know.
You can't turn off the personal experience of the divine. That doesn't go away, but you can totally reject institutional religion, and then where are you with respect to your understanding your own experience?
Yeah,
agreed.
Yeah, that hits close to my heart because speaking of vision, for a long time I was I don't want to tell people what I'm able to do is frightening, of how people respond to that. Hey, we're taught that it's crazy.
Earlier you talked about abracadabra. Do you connect that to Abraxas? How do you connect that?
This is a really fun depiction of Abraxas here.
I like it. It's like Baphomet, but
it's like Yaldabaoth almost.
Cockle-do or cockle-don't, that is Abraxas.
This is actually, if you want to know, not that why would we care, but Charles Manson's personal religious ideology or whatever is very centered around Abraxas. It's like his trip.
So who is Abraxas? What is the Abraxas?
Isn't Abraxas connected to Mercury? Speaking of Mercury retrograde, is there a connection there? I feel like there was.
The not mystic meaning of the system Abraxas. Mystic meaning in the system of Gnostic Basileus, the great Archon, the princeps of 365 spheres. You saw a messenger of Mercury somewhere?
I feel like there was a connection of Abraxas and Mercury, and I feel like I got it from Manly P. Hall, but it's a vague connection. Whatever. I don't think it's that relevant. But yeah, all that Gnosticism is so it gets so complex, the whole cosmology and stuff. It's just I've always found it kind of intimidating, to delve into Gnosticism. It's probably becoming more popular now, I would say. But
yeah, you don't get killed for it anymore, I guess.
Yeah, it's
for now. I know it's interesting because I see the masculine version of the Starbucks logo.
Sure.
Original Starbucks had the split tail siren. It's still there, but it's cropped.
You ever listen to that video where the guy is calling the marketing department and they send him up the chain because he just wants to know what the Starbucks symbol means, what it means,
really?
And it's nobody could tell him, and he was like, I just want to know, what does the symbol mean? They're like, the symbol? He's like, yeah, your freaking logo. What is that? The two tails?
It's not hard. I mean, it's Ishtar, right? Ishtar bucks,
right? But these are the people in charge of marketing that he was put in contact with, and he recorded the conversation, and it was and he was like, "Are you pretending you don't know?" Or you genuinely is like, how are you in charge of marketing, but you don't know what the symbol means? You know,
there's a lot of clones underneath the Sith Lords, if you know what I'm saying. But I don't know. I mean, I think you look at the Starbucks logo, and I think a lot of them have to know. And people who work at Starbucks, there's a lot of decent people. I've met some weird stuff though, like Mormons who don't drink coffee working at Starbucks. I've known way too many. I don't know. I think that's really weird. I love Mormons. I just think that Mormons who work at Starbucks, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, think about what you're doing to people. You're a drug dealer. Stop. But at the same time, like the people who work at Starbucks will write your name wrong. You know what I'm talking about? Where like you give them like a name like David, and it comes back like GHB, and you're like, what? That's not what I want on my drink. I don't understand. And I feel like that's a spell. You know, because if you
what I can get is Stavid, because what happens is I say it's David, and then they hear Stavid, and then it's like Stavid.
So you're just trying to make excuses. You're like, these poor people who are just trying to work at this store so they can buy their methadone, and like, I get what you're saying, but they're on so much coffee and Adderall that it's David. It's like,
but you don't want to correct them.
Spritney.
They never spell my name right, and so I get it.
Have you ever gotten a cup of Starbucks spelled right?
No, never. My name's spelled
so
different.
It's intentional.
It's like Brittany,
they can't do it
wrong.
They can't do it wrong. They're doing what they're trying to do right. They're trying to spell names wrong on purpose. And you accept that when you get that cup and they're like, "Is that you?" You're like, "Yeah, that's me," but it's not you, right? It's like that is.
I never got that upset or emotional.
But think about it, because according to the Uniform Commercial Code, right? The Uniform Commercial Code says that if you accept the benefits of a contract and you accept the obligations of the contract, that's like what a contract is. So what you just did was you accepted. It's kind of like when you get a credit card and it has all the letters in capital letters, so you know how
it's your corporation.
Capitalist new.
You're saying it's the same thing at Starbucks when you get your coffee. They've just
it's worse.
Your
I'm saying it's worse.
Now you've conformed to be that.
When you get a credit card and it has your letters in all capital letters, right? What that means is that you've an alias, an avatar that's been created that in terms of Roman law and all uniform law has their rights removed, right? It's like worse than a slave. A slave has lowercase letters like the metric system, but a person who's had their rights removed in infamia is all cap lock.
What do you know the source for this? So I only know it to the like I've heard different people say it, but the closest that I can get to the root of that is David Icke, and I don't know if he cited a source for where he got that idea. The lowercase letters, like so if you get pulled over and you sign a speeding ticket, and that recognition that your natural self connects to your birth certificate self, like your social security number and everything attached to it, that you're affirming that your natural self and that self are the same self, and that supposedly when you get legal contracts like that and your name is in all caps, that's because this is specifying that this is yourself as it relates to your social security number. And
I don't recall if David Icke said that, but there's certain
he said that in Children of the Matrix, I think.
Oh, interesting.
There's a couple. I talked to the guy that was doing that in Australia. You get back your identity and you have to get your birth certificate back. And you have 2 birthdays.
And the Amish are sovereign citizens, and they don't have to pay taxes because they're not fed into the social security system. There's ways of doing it, but the difference is that, a slave never had the cap lock. It's all lowercase. An infamia is like somebody like infamous. So like someone who's become famous has lost all their rights because they're property of the public. Their identity is. So that's where it's all.
But
capital.
When you're born, you have your birthday, and then you have a second birthday when you get your social security once you're processed. So when you get those papers back, that's how you're able to actually delineate between your like caps lock self and that birthday, and then your natural self.
Right. Well, so the thing is, you've signed over, so whatever responsibilities that slave has or that infamous person has, you now have responsibility over them, and so that sucks because they have no rights at all. But then I wonder, like, how much worse is what you just did when you signed your name at Starbucks?
You can deny all rights to that entity, though. That's how you become sovereign.
But what if you're getting possessed by a demon at Starbucks, which is worse?
Aren't you always if you're in there? Yeah. Like, this is the thing. They're here already. Jesus Christ. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I only use it for, like, exorcisms. You go to the bathroom in a Starbucks and you get out.
That's the public bathrooms in New York.
Yeah. Cheers. I don't know. I mean, but there's a lot there.
So here's my question to you, and this is completely speculative. But if we entertain this idea that when you sign a ticket that you're agreeing that your natural physical self that's signing this is connected with this self on paper that relates to your social security and everything else. So like if people go through like the secret societies and they have those different grades where you're like, you know what, like, there's all these kind of like almost like what do you call that, divination. So like when you reach these different grades, is it possible that if things are connected, like in terms of these societies and governments and the way that there's, you know, that there's kind of like, you know, some relative control or influence, is it possible that certain people get to be above that, where they actually, suppose they were to get pulled over, like their natural self is their natural self. Like they might not even have, like on paper, they might not be treated the same way. Like I'm curious, like do they have different types of paperwork if you reach certain levels of society in the echelon, you know? And is that what they mean by like if you're transcending ego or whatever, but it's really you're just fucking transcending the crap that every regular person has to deal with, you know, in terms of your identity? I don't know. I thought about that. I don't know how true it is.
I mean, yeah, I don't necessarily know if I believe that there's actually like because there's the you that people experience, there's the you want to be.
Are you saying in legal terms with the police?
Legal terms. I'm saying specifically legal.
Levels you can claim of sovereignty, and the police can't do anything.
But unless you've already done so many steps in, like if there's once you've started to accept the benefits of a contract. And so you have to see like how much of your life you've already accepted benefits of a contract that Amish people haven't.
I mean, I don't know if this is true or not, but a friend did tell me, Zhao, a Freemason friend, that he has gotten pulled over before and just fiddled with his ring, and the cop catches what he's doing and is like, "Oh, you go about your business," or whatever.
Yeah, it's nice to meet. That's the other thing. It's actually better to do that, arguably. So if you're gonna do something,
join the Freemasons.
I'm just saying, like, if you're gonna like become a sovereign citizen, like watch a bunch of YouTube videos of the dudes who do it slightly wrong, and then a police officer smashes their window in because they're just sitting there in their car trying to ignore the police officer, and then look at what happens when, or try to understand why in the middle of America a lot of the time, or on the coast even, where it's even more weird people are coming through all the time, that the police are looking for people that they find familiar faces, familiar symbols. And if you're like, hey, you know what, I know what you're up to, you know what I'm up to enough to let me live my life. I honestly, you know, I don't know, I'm just saying, I think sometimes that makes as much sense as like fighting the system.
But I'm speaking more to something that I actually have seen from a friend of mine, where you know, I knew a guy, I shouldn't say his name, I'm tempted when I'm talking about people, but I don't know, so you may have known him, Andreas, and I don't know if I've ever shared this with you before, but there was somebody in our scene years ago I met through Rodman, actually, and he was an Israeli man whose father had a factory that was like basically a drug factory in the territories. So so I had heard from other people that this friend was like basically untouchable, that he could do whatever he wanted and he could not get in trouble for the most part. And I was like, what does that mean? Is he untouchable? Why is he untouchable? And so one day he had like the silver bus that they used to take to Burning Man, and a bunch of people used to go out in it. And one day I opened a door in that bus and I saw ecstasy in. But this is 20 years ago or something, or 15 years ago or something. So I think statute of limitations, I'm not worried. I'm just going to share it. So I saw a stack of freaking bags. And it's hard to describe. It was like, that is a lot of ecstasy. So he flew that in here from Israel. And it is true that if he got stopped by anybody at any point, it's like they can try and do something initially, and then they'll basically get word like, "Nah, you leave this guy alone." So he had connections, you know, and he was kind of arrogant about it or whatever. But it was 100% true. So my point is that on this, what's that? I'm sorry.
Hunter Biden was a tough guy to go to Burning Man with. You know?
So I'm just saying, if that exists on this level, I can't imagine what it would be for people who could buy their way out of Forbes list of most richest people. You know, like that would be the extreme. But it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like stuff goes on all the time. Like most people wouldn't even consider like untouchable. Like you can just do what you want, and that's just that. You get, because if you ever get cops at you, they're like, your name goes into the system, and what they get back is leave that guy alone.
Yeah.
It's like that.
You guys
So
ever see like the 1099 like foundation like on cars in California? You guys ever see that?
No, what's that?
No, but I heard like that's a way to get like you donate money, and I heard you don't get it. None of them get tickets.
Be one of the 1099ers.
I can't remember if it was like the highway patrol, like where you donate and it goes to them.
Oh yeah, and always donate to your police.
You get those stickers on your
you
bumper.
get a sticker and you get like a license plate frame, and they're always like really nice cars and
yeah. I don't know. This is
probably trafficking.
We're teaching people how to be dubious on the show.
Like, I grew,
Join the Freemasons. Get out of tickets.
Like in Paraguay, like you move into Paraguay, like you're in Mexico and in Paraguay, you're paying people to live in the town. It's just kind of, you know what I mean? You're like, it's a safety feature. You know, it keeps it. It's better than the police are here. Trust me. And so if you're paying the police directly here, how is that any different than anywhere else? And realistically, wouldn't you rather have a personal relationship with the police in your community than rely on this sort of ambiguous state police? And I don't know, because I'm not saying that they're perfect, because I'd still prefer, like, to bribe the cartels to have less traffic. I mean, living in Atapuerca was definitely better.
Right. If you can pick the cartels, though, or who's running them, I mean, Jesus.
You can pick your nose.
Well, that's the thing, man.
You can't pick the cartel's nose. I think
yeah. We're all like, these cartels, they're terrible, but it's like they're so loved. And what are you supposed to do? Like with law enforcement, when it's like all the people in a community are like all about somebody and wanting to protect them, and then they're like, no, you don't understand. You're hurting these sheep. No, I know we're hurting the sheep. No, you're hurting them. Leave them alone. I know that's what I do. I herd sheep. Sorry.
We've done some gnarly cops. We should get Scott on the show sometime and just talk about some of the crazy things that happened in Pacific Avenue and Santa Cruz. Like Santa Cruz cops, like there's some crazy stories. There's also really good police, good sheriffs out there and everything else. I think this has come up before, that the idea of elected sheriffs are very different than, hired police. And police do these exchange programs. Like, so you go to the police station, you'll see these flyers for where they have the international police games. So the British police and the Russian police, up to a point, until recently probably, and the American police, they're all interacting, and then they exchange. So what do you do? Like getting arrested by a British guy? You're like, what the hell? Are you kidding me?
Right. But for like, there was like a pivotal moment. There was a moment where it was possible that where we could have had Hunter S. Thompson as the sheriff of Aspen. And the big deal about that isn't about Aspen, it's about the precedent, because to elect somebody based on that and to see how Aspen would have functioned following that would have been a big deal, I gotta say.
I've noticed since like COVID or whatever, like the Laguna Beach police, like the way it's handled, it's like so psychological, where they'll just park cop cars at like entrances, like there's only a few ways in to the town. And then like, really late at night, you hear 3 cop cars with their sirens go on. It's like almost like, oh, we got it covered. And then, you just randomly drones will go, and it's like, I don't know, it's almost like a psychological presence of just having the cop cars at each entrance in South Laguna, and then in, Maine, and then north, where it's like, like
keeping you safe.
Yeah, like the visual of like, look, and then at night when they're just driving around, 3 of them, just psychologically of like, everything's handled, like we're fine, we're doing our job.
That's funny. I was looking the other way. I'm like, as soon as the cops pass, I'm like, oh god, we got an hour. We got an hour and just like make out and just be ourselves. You know what I mean, America? That's what it feels like. So they're gonna go around the block and they're gonna come back, and then it'll just like your freedom is like in that time. It's not that they're keeping me safe. And a lot of times, like, it's an empty police car parked somewhere.
Empty.
At best,
is your mic on, Andreas? Because somebody in the comments said your mic is on.
Yeah.
You can't hear me.
I can't hear you or me.
Boulder Dash, 1 second.
Well, I can hear you. I don't know what they're saying. So.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. This thing got...
He's been saying
second.
great things, Chad.
1 second. Oh God.
You'll never know. Hopefully my mic was muted too.
We're back. Okay.
Yeah, you are back.
Woo.
Wait, you can hear her though?
I couldn't hear me.
How unfair is that?
don't
I
know.
just don't understand how this works.
Torturous.
Okay, well, we're at the end of the show. You guys put up a lot. Thank you very much. Amelia, I'm going to show them your website. 1 second. Did you guys know that Amelia makes like the best music?
Oh, whoa. I
It's
did.
If you go to the music tab, it's I just had an album come out December 21st.
Oh, cool.
Ooh, David Charles
Sweet.
played signs that I'm not going crazy.
Light your own
already
damn
there.
candle. Okay.
And this is one of the syncs. We'll go back to this in a second for David's poll. But yeah, there's a lot of music. You can watch the YouTube videos here. You can subscribe to They Don't Teach. I think, is that the name of your channel, or is that no Ned DeHart? That was a video.
That was
Subscribe.
a song.
Boom.
Yay. Cool.
Epic. Guys, go subscribe. Give her 1,000 subscribers so that she can get monetized.
She's had a new album come out and has another album on the way.
Where's the music? Oh, there's the music tab at the top.
Yeah.
Music.
And David
like
did David's done the cover art for the whole top row.
See, Brittany, she uses Bandcamp.
Not the whole top row.
no,
that
you're right.
second one is Alan's, actually.
Right.
I love Bandcamp.
I love David's art
This is cool.
and Bandcamp, I guess.
Yeah,
Promo
look at
Bandcamp.
that one,
Yeah.
the one in the upper left there.
This guy?
Diana's mirror. Yeah.
There's a lot
yeah.
of collaboration with David.
Cool.
So like the song Diana's just he was like, you have to write a song about the Golden Bough. And
Well,
As David will do.
yeah. So what it was is that there's actually there's songs about the Golden Bough, and there's films, and there's all kinds of things. Kubrick referenced it and whatever. But Jim Morrison with "Not to Touch the Earth, Not to See the Sun." Those are two chapters side by side in the Golden Bough. So you know that "Not to Touch the Earth" the song is referencing that. But the thing is that I never heard a song relating to the Golden Bough from the perspective of a woman. And so what Amelia did is she took that and she did it. It's all from the princess's perspective. So a stranger, the archetypal fool, right? He challenges the king by pulling a limb off of this tree, which is both symbolic of the king's dick and the king's daughter. And by pulling this, he's challenging his manhood. And if he defeats the king in combat, sometimes the king would actually kill himself and do it willingly. Other times they would fight. It's all, and it depends on where it was happening or whatever. But the idea is that we had this system in place to rejuvenate the kingdom, to make the last first, and the first was like kind of a version of the Jubilee of a forgiving of the debt and the releasing of the slaves, because this outsider, he had to be a complete outsider, had to meet these qualifications. If he defeats the king, he marries the king's daughter. And so the song that Amelia did is from the perspective of the princess, who knows that the only way that she's going to get laid is if her father dies, to the man that she's going to lose her virginity to. And she's basically saying, so be it.
sorry, Dad.
Sorry, Dad. It's got to happen.
Papa, don't
Gotta
preach
get
on it. And I'm keeping up.
Hey,
Rosemary's
it's a
Baby.
ritual. I don't
Yeah.
know. What do you expect?
Cool.
That's the song I'm writing. It's a ritual. It's a show.
Cool.
The syncbook.com, get this, / the syncflix. Not really. You actually have to just click on that button.
/ Think Media Research, technically, but yeah.
Wouldn't it be neat if that could work? But yeah, if you click on this picture of the dark side of Dorothy, then you will get to see a lot of amazing things. The Love Witch. Did you just finish this one? I didn't. I don't think you finished this one yet.
Well, this one I actually did a while ago, but I hadn't uploaded it to the site, and so
Gotcha.
we're gonna have her new albums. Her
God, you're moving
last
fast.
albums
Don't
and
say
the next
that.
album actually are go with the film Men.
You
And
put out
so,
like 6 at least, like really recently. I mean, that's pretty awesome. There's a lot of good movies here to watch. I love. The funny thing is, I'll watch them and I'll be like, "Oh, that's so great," and then Brittany will be like, "I haven't seen the original," so that's fun because then you can go back and watch the original again.
Right. With some of them,
Except for
especially
Florence and the Machine, because she did get to see that one.
Yeah.
That was
Well,
brilliant.
with a lot of these, there's dialogue in between all the vocals. So I've turned the volume up of the film. This is one such example. And somehow this one just completely flows that way. There's actually no point where it actually conflicts if I turn the volume up between any of the vocals.
Wow.
It's freaking
That's so
amazing.
cool.
Super amazing. Guys, go to thesyncbook.com. look at the David videos. Hail Julia on Instagram. Julia, what do you think?
That's me. There I am.
She does reels as well. She's been doing some interesting stuff though. She also does a lot of art, which is really cool, and dancing. But she's done some talks with a lot of people, and so I look forward to seeing a lot more of Julia's work. And guys, you can contact Julia through Instagram. And gals, recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
There's truth for her, but that's fine.
Would you rather?
No, the recent Tartarians.
Well, guys, she's at 414 subscribers. She's got a bunch of channels, and so maybe like give every one of them a subscriber. But hear me out. Put all of them in one bucket for tonight and get her 1,000. Because if you get at least one of the channels to 1,000. That'd be great.
Decided what channel to use.
Whatever. Get to the one that's you can change its name later. So guys, go to the Recent Tartarians. It's playing right now there. You can go there. You just subscribe to the Recent Tartarians. So
we can get really meta. What happens if you click on that?
Hi.
Oh, you guys want to see this? This is really cool.
I was on my channel.
Whoa. And then I'm gonna click on it. I'm hearing you say we can get really meta. What happens when you click on it? Now I'm clicking on it. Okay, now he's gonna open it and he's gonna click on it. He's saying I'm gonna click on it. I'm hearing myself say I'm gonna click on it. Oh, now he's clicking on it. Oh my god.
No.
I'm really too into this. I'm so sorry.
Oh god.
If you do this a couple of times though, I'll probably dance to it because it's gonna become a beat.
Beyond the infinite 2 minutes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
It had to happen. You can't
do
that.
I still hear it. Okay, I better make it stop. Guys, thank you for putting up with that. That was crazy. Amelia, thank you for being here, and you're welcome back anytime. And Julia, thank you too.
Thank you. It's so nice to have this experience, you guys. It's an honor. Thank you so much.
I think Brittany's camera's gone. But
Yeah, I'm gone, but it's still over here. Hi. Thanks, everybody.
That's cousin it, right? Okay.
No, that's
what's his name?
The hand. That's the hair. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's thing.
Because your hand thing. That was thing.
God.
Where's RedEye?
So bad.
Bye.
The world is very different now. For man holds in his mortal hand the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life.
Begins a very special time of the year for us. It's the time of peace and reflection. One thing we should all be thankful for is that we live in America, where we have the freedom to change things and the opportunity to grow.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States. That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States. And will, to the best of your ability. And will, to the best of my ability. Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help you God. So help me God.